Here we go.
And here we go indeed. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live, a special edition of Carving Up Live, the 2024 Carving It Up NFL Kickoff Show. I am Bryson Carver. I am so freaking excited to be here today. This is my fifth full season covering the NFL on the show, sixth in total, going back to the middle of the 2019 season when the show first began. We got a ton to get into today. So first and foremost, let's just sit in the fact, let's just bask in the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, football is officially back. We've got an NFL game on Thursday. We've got an NFL game on Friday in Brazil, in South America for the first time in the history of the NFL. And of course, this weekend, we got awesome games on Sunday and a great game on Monday Night Football between the Jets and the 49ers. We've got tons to get into. Gonna go division by division, team by team, breaking down what they're going to do this season. Some teams that will exceed expectations, some that will disappoint, and some will be about right where we kind of all figure that they will be, depending on how you view certain teams. We'll go through award winners. We're going to go through MVP, Coach of the Year, Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Years, Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, all the big awards, all the pageantry that comes with certain players' NFL accomplishments. But most importantly, and this is what it's all about, this is the whole reason we're even here. Who wins the daggum Super Bowl? Who wins Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, Louisiana this February? NFC champion, AFC champion. I'm going to predict all that. I'm excited to hear all of y'all's feedback in the comments. Let's keep that comment section lively. Be sure, again, if you have not subscribed to Carving It Up, please be sure to hit that big red subscribe button on my channel as well as the Grid Network's channel, trying to get as much feedback, as much growth on this show and on the Grid as a whole as we can. So definitely hit that big red subscribe button, like, share this to everybody, all your friends. I mean, fantasy football's ramping up. You know, gambling's going to be off the charts once the season arrives. College football just started. We had a great college football weekend. This is, honest to God, this is one of my favorite shows of the year, and I can't wait to get into it. I got some comments here by my man, Jeff. He says, this one's going to be good. Yeah, there you go. As the great Dak Prescott would say, here we go. I played the Joker clip from one of the greatest movies in the history of civilization, The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's Joker, rest in peace. Great jersey, Bryce. I appreciate it. Got my TJ Watt Steelers jersey. Got my Steelers hat on. I'm feeling good. You'll see my prediction for the Steelers in about 10 to 15 minutes or so. Going division by division. Modern Dragon says, nice intro. I appreciate you for that. Let's keep that comment section lively. So without further ado, before we even get into the predictions for the divisions, because there's a lot of headlines, a lot of stories coming this year, and none more so than, will the Kansas City Chiefs become the first team in the history of the NFL in the Super Bowl era to three-peat, to go back to back to back, win 3 straight Super Bowls? Many have tried. The 49ers in the 80s, almost three-peat, came close. There was a fumble, 2 minutes left. Giants recovered, ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. Niners came close, couldn't quite. Tom Brady's Patriots kind of had a disappointing year in 2005 after going back-to-back in 03 and 04. There's so many examples of teams that have come close somewhat that just couldn't quite get over the hump. And the number one reason for that, I would think, historically speaking, is complacency. That's the number one reason. Listen, you got your first ring. It's hard enough to go back and get a second ring. There's a reason that up until the Chiefs, no team had done it in 20 years. The Chiefs were trying to do it 3 straight for the first time in the history of the Super Bowl. Complacency is a factor with the Kansas City Chiefs in theory. But what I find somewhat odd is that over the course of the last 7 months, going back to Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas back this past February when the Chiefs beat the 49ers in what was an all-time classic, it's odd that the Chiefs, in an odd way, seem to not be getting quite the same level of love and respect as other back-to-back champions have. We're talking cross sports, especially in the NBA. I feel like the Warriors, my Golden State Warriors, got a ton of respect. They were terrorizing the league in 2017 and 2018 going back-to-back. The Lakers back in the early 21st century three-peating themselves. Got all the adoration and respect from prognosticators and fans alike. The Chiefs aren't. Patrick Mahomes, by his own peers, ranked the 4th best player in the NFL and not even the best quarterback. They put Lamar Jackson over Patrick Mahomes. You got the Las Vegas Raiders, the perceived rival of the Chiefs, talking about how, hey, this is, we're going to pull up the Kermit. Going to pull out the Kermit puppet. We're going to make fun of Mahomes, even though we've beaten him one time. And we're going to poke the bear, so to speak. The Bengals have talked over the months. The Baltimore Ravens, to a lesser degree, have talked about how they're going to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. Leave it to Patrick Mahomes, who's chasing one man and one man only. He's passed he has climbed every summit, every mountain as it pertains to competition with other quarterbacks in the history of the game of professional football, but one. And it is a steep mountain indeed. We are talking Everest size, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Brady. 7-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time league MVP, undoubtedly the greatest quarterback ever. I've called Brady the greatest athlete in the history of team sports. A championship this year will not put Mahomes past Tom. It won't. But it sure closed the gap. You can't say Tom never three-peated. You could say, yeah, whole NFL history never three-peated in the Super Bowl era until Patrick Mahomes did it, if he were to do such a thing in 2024. So you have that level of motivation from Mahomes. You have the level of motivation for the Mahomes with the Kermit thing. You have the level of motivation for Mahomes with, hey, my peers don't even think I'm the best quarterback in the NFL, despite being a 3-time Super Bowl MVP and a 2-time regular season MVP, despite the fact that Travis Kelce is in discussion with Rob Gronkowski as the greatest tight end in NFL history. The fact that my coach, Andy Reid, will potentially with the championship put himself at least on the doorstep of the greatest coach discussion. Certainly the greatest offensive coach of this generation. There's no question about that. Chiefs defense is great. They upgraded their wide receivers. That's going to be a fascinating story with the Chiefs. Another story, and then we'll get into predictions. It's like the preamble before you open presents on Christmas morning. I will get to that in a couple of minutes. But something that you're going to see, I'm going to start with the AFC, but something you're going to see in my predictions is that the last couple of years, and I've acknowledged, I think most people have, the AFC is better than the NFC. Right? The last few years, it's felt that way, and I think it has been that way. I mean, for crying out loud, the AFC's had the back-to-back Super Bowl champs, the Chiefs. And the Chiefs' road to get to the Super Bowl, they had to beat not one, not two, but 3 11-plus win teams to get there, and obviously a 12-win Niners team to win the Super Bowl, is that I think the NFC is far deeper this year. As I was going through each of my predictions, AFC I felt pretty confident about just about all of them. Just about all of them. NFC, aside from the obvious ones, there were about 3 or 4 areas where I'm like, I mean, and we're well, by the way, knock on wood, we're all talking health permitted, of course. But there's a few where I'm like, yeah, I could see him going to the NFC Championship game, and I could see them missing the playoffs. Like that, it's that level of depth in the NFC that we haven't seen in quite some time as it pertains to improved quarterback play, adding Caleb Williams to the Chicago Bears, as it pertains to upgrading your roster. You talk about teams like the Detroit Lions in the draft. You talk about what the Philadelphia Eagles have done in the draft, the Rams the last couple of drafts, and free agency. I think we're going to look at an NFC, and when we go into the playoffs, there will be no clear frontrunner. I think my predictions will bear that out. You will see that over the course of the show. Whereas the AFC, spoiler alert, I've got Kansas City in the playoffs. We will all, regardless of who the 1 seed is, it could be the Chiefs, could be somebody else like the Ravens or the maybe the Bills shock some people. Who knows? There will still be that level of, yeah, but you can't bet against Mahomes. Kind of like we used to do with Brady back in the day with the Patriots and briefly with Tampa Bay. You can't bet against Mahomes. Can't bet against Andy Reid. They got championship DNA. Whereas in the NFC, it's wide open. Wide open. So I'm very excited to get into all of that today. So you know what? Let me take a drink of water here. Be ready to go. Listen, this is, forget all this. Let's get into predictions. We are going to start with the AFC East. So we will go sort of like a blind resume sort of thing. So we'll go from 4 to 1. At number 4, this feels pretty darn obvious in the AFC East. Put up the graphic, is the New England Patriots. The Patriots I've got as a 4-win team. Again, could Drake May elevate them into a 5-win team? I do think we're going to see Drake May this season. Maybe. Do I like some of the pieces with the New England Patriots defensively? I do. I like Christian Gonzalez. I hated that he got hurt early last season. He might have been, if memory serves me correct, might have been my pick to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think the kid is really, really special. Loved him in college. But Bill Belichick gone, Jerome Mayo in. Jerome Mayo's a Tennessee guy, go Vols. But this Patriot offense is, I think, far and away the least talented in the league. Again, we'll see what Drake May is. I've always said, since the draft, Drake May is going to be the classic, just like crazy high ceiling and really low floor. Drake May is going to be awesome or he is going to be terrible. I have a hard time seeing him becoming like an average, like a Tua Tagovailoa style quarterback in the National Football League. Patriots got a long way to go. They got a couple more drafts just to put themselves in a position where we can even think about them in the playoff context. So the Patriots obviously the clear number 4 in the AFC East. Go to number 3. This is going to shock some people, but I think it's fairly obvious. The New York Jets. The Jets are going to repeat their season last year and go 7-10. And yes, I am aware Aaron Rodgers is back. Here's the fact of the matter with the New York Jets. You're talking about an offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, who has a career record going back to it when he was an offensive coordinator, which he is now at the Jets, and his brief stint with the Denver Broncos in 2022 before he was fired, before the last game was played, as a bad head coach, as a bad offensive coordinator, uncreative, doesn't relate to players terribly well, just does not work whatsoever. Hackett is an objectively awful offensive coordinator. Robert Saleh. I've heard folks defend him. Well, Saleh's never had great quarterback play. Mike Tomlin had great quarterback play last year. Steelers got to the playoffs. Did Kevin Stefanski have great quarterback play last year? Browns had some people thinking they could go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. So I think Saleh, and I'll give him this, that just to be a competent coach, a head coach in the NFL, your side of the ball has to be good. So Saleh's a defensive coach. I got nothing bad to say about the Jets defense. Their front four is really good. Obviously, Quinnen Williams anchoring, kind of the interior. We'll see if Hassan Reddick maybe comes back. I think he's in a situation where he may have to. Otherwise, he gets dealt at the trade deadline. Sauce Gardner's an offensive quarter. You look at their linebacking core is really strong. They've got an excellent defense. Sorry, I still don't buy in the offense. Aaron Rodgers has not been good. I'm not kidding, since I was in high school. Aaron Rodgers' last playoff appearance, to his credit, MVP, as well as his last 300-yard passing game, happened in 2021. Folks, we're 3 years later. In that time, he led the Packers, who Jordan Love took the playoffs the year after, to an 8-9 record. The next year, he ended up going to the Jets. There was a lot of optimism, and then tragically, 4 plays into the season, boom, he blows his Achilles, and the season goes up in smoke for the Jets. And this offseason, they did improve their offensive line. Credit to them. I like some of the moves they made, particularly Tyron Smith, nabbing him from the Cowboys. And Garrett Wilson is a special wide receiver. Mike Williams can't stay healthy, and the rest of the receiving core is really, really thin. Breece Hall, I have injury concerns with that as well. So just given the fact how stacked the AFC is, how I think there's a lot of games on the Jets schedule where in theory they're better on paper, but they don't match up terribly well. They're going to lose a lot of these games. I said back in January that because of the return of Rodgers, there'd be more optimism, and for that reason, it would be a more disappointing season for the Jets. I think it's 7-10. I think Rodgers potentially retires after this year. Saleh's gone, Hackett's gone, and it's a total rebuild from the top on down for the New York Jets. Joe Douglas is gone as well. So the Jets, I do not see, forget a Super Bowl contender. I think that's absurd. I don't see them as a playoff contender. So the Jets repeat last year and go 7-10. Let's go to number 2 in the AFC East. I've got the Miami Dolphins going 9-8. And by the way, for the playoff teams in here, you'll see like a little green statement in parentheses that says playoffs. So there's not one right there for the Dolphins. I think Miami misses the playoffs this year after getting there the last couple of seasons. And here's why. So Vic Fangio was their defensive coordinator. I thought he was slightly overrated in his time in Miami, but that you have a new defensive coordinator. So there's a lack of continuity there. And the fact that the Dolphins do not have a good defense. They lost their anchor of their interior defensive line, Christian Wilkins, in free agency. Defensively, Jalen Ramsey is getting up there in age. I just don't like what they have on the defensive side of the ball, especially when you got to play Josh Allen twice a year. You also consider offensively. Well, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. Jalen Wright at the University of Tennessee, go Vols, drafted by Miami. Perfect fit there. But Tua Tagovailoa, like him, God bless him for getting paid. But we're in a situation with the Miami Dolphins where Tua Tagovailoa is a bad quarterback in sub 47 degree temperatures. The numbers are 49. I think it was like 49 degrees, sub 50 degree temperatures. The guy has a passer rating in the toilet. Record's bad. He does not win games in chilly weather. That's going to handicap the Dolphins. It's really going to put them, I think, middle to back half of their schedule is brutal, especially in terms of cold weather games. So I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins to miss the playoffs. And that obviously leaves number 1 in the AFC East. I think the Bills win the division with an 11-6 record, just like they did a year ago. So last year on this very show, I thought Buffalo was going to miss the playoffs. I thought the vibes were terrible coming into the season. I didn't love their offensive line coming in. There was the Stephon Diggs stuff. I thought the AFC was too stacked. I actually picked the Jets to make the playoffs last year. I thought the Bills were in a spot where it could get really ugly really quickly, and they missed the playoffs. This year, I kind of feel a little bit different because the Bills' offensive line we saw at the end of last season played really, really well, and they did lose Mitch Morse, I believe, this offseason, but I still like the pieces they have in that O-line. Pro Football Focus still has it as an above-average line. The receiving core isn't anything to write home about, But when you consider the fact that Stephon Diggs in that Bills winning streak for them to sneak into the playoffs and win the AFC East last year, is that Stephon Diggs did not put up good numbers at all. So you replace him, trading him to the Texans, obviously, with Keon Coleman, really, really talented rookie wide receiver. I believe out of Texas, can really make some things happen. We haven't seen him play yet, but I like what I see. You still have Khalil Shakir, who I really like as kind of a run-after-catch guy. You've got James Cook in the backfield, who you had a lot of success with a year ago under Joe Brady. Remember Joe Brady, LSU, Joe Burrow. Joe Brady now comes to the Bills mid-season as the interim guy. The offense, I don't want to say like turns on a dime, but it certainly became a more efficient offense. Josh Allen is still an excellent quarterback, bar none top 5 in the NFL. He's got the best running game of his career. He's got the best offensive line of his career. By the way, the tight ends in Buffalo, Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, maybe the best tight end duo in the sport. So listen, I think this idea that Allen doesn't have any weapons, listen, it's not a stat core at all, but I like the piece they got in Buffalo offensively. And listen, for my criticisms of Sean McDermott, I've called him the Mark Jackson of the NFL. Like, where Mark Jackson, it was great for my Warriors at setting a culture, right? The Warriors do not become a dynasty without the guidance of Mark Jackson early on, but he just couldn't take them to the next level. I feel the same way about Sean McDermott, but he specializes on his side of the ball. The Bills defense, I think, will still be good. The Bills offense will be better than folks think. They'll win this division with an 11-6 record. So that's why I got with the AFC East. If we can go and put up that one more time. So number 1, I got the Bills going 11-6, obviously making the playoffs, winning the division. Dolphins go, the rest of these teams miss the playoffs. Dolphins go 9-8. Jets disappoint everybody and go 7-10. And the Patriots are obviously one of the worst teams in the league, probably the worst roster in the league, no question, with a 4-13 record. So that's where I got the AFC East. It's actually, well, not identical to last year, but kind of where we felt like it would be toward the end of last season. So that's where we have Jeff in the comments says, totally agree with the rankings in the AFC East. Just the win-loss totals feel a little bit different to him. I respect that. And listen, Miami was one of the few teams where I'm like, God, I'll put them in the playoffs or not. And there's also too, biggest knock on whatever, but Tua obviously has the injury history. Like that does exist. That is a thing. That is something that you're going to have to keep your eye out if you're a Dolphins fan. Again, knock on wood, he played every game last year. Prayers that's going to continue to be the case for him, but that does linger. Again, Tyreek Hill will be great. Jalen Waddle will be great, and Tua will put up gaudy numbers in some of these games against bad teams like the Raiders or something like that. I just don't see this team in Miami with a defense that did not get better, actually got worse in the offseason, and also the stigma, which is a fact, that Tua simply does not play well in cold weather. And Tua, as the season progresses, gets worse and worse. And I think a lot has to do with the weather. Again, to me, the only way the Dolphins have any sort of playoff success with Tua is if they were to improve that defense drastically, maybe next year, go on a crazy run and get the number 1 seed in the AFC. So that weather is not a concern. You get to go play in beautiful South Beach, Miami. You're comfortable. It's where you're used to playing, and you don't have to face cold weather. That's not going to be a reality for the Dolphins this season. I got them missing the playoffs, and the Bills coming out on top, and the Jets shocking a lot of people and simply not being a very good football team. Let's move the AFC North now. My division, the Pittsburgh Steelers division, in my opinion, the second best in the NFL. Spoiler alert, to the NFC North. AFC North going to put up right there, dead last, right where they belong, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are going to go 7-10 this year. So obviously, the logic for believing in Cleveland this year would be, hey, the quarterback play was terrible a year ago. You had to go through a bunch of guys, Deshaun, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You had to go through a bunch of guys. You eventually land on Joe Flacco off his couch. You have a little bit of success with him, but he throws a bunch of interceptions, and those chickens come home to roost against the Houston Texans in their playoff loss, and the Browns get blown off the field. Listen, it's still a fantastic defense led by a great, obviously a phenomenal player, Myles Garrett, and a great defensive coordinator in Jim Schwartz. So listen, I have no questions about Cleveland on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think anybody should. But offensively, I do. So a lot of folks are talking about how, Deshaun Watson's back, but it's another injury he's coming off of. Deshaun has not been good. I said Aaron hasn't been good since 2021. Deshaun hasn't been good since 2020. Since we were smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, that's the last time Deshaun Watson resembled anything close to, forget an elite quarterback, just a competent quarterback. So I think that's going to factor for the Browns. But also what we're forgetting, Nick Chubb's not going to be there for the first part of the season. Nick Chubb's coming off a terrible, gruesome injury that he suffered against my Steelers last year in week 2 on Monday Night Football. So what will Nick Chubb's health be? Nick Chubb has an injury history. The Browns receiving core is fine. Amari Cooper's still very productive. David Njoku, who's a Pro Bowl level guy, but the Browns offensive line suffered some injuries. Like that's, I think, going to hurt them even more. And I simply don't believe in Deshaun Watson. I think Stefanski's an awesome coach. I really do. I wish he were in a better situation, but the Browns are not well run in terms of their ownership. Andrew Berry's done a good job as their GM at putting as much talent as they can around the albatross of a contract that's Deshaun Watson. I don't believe in this team whatsoever. And then at the third place spot, yes, preserving the non-losing season streak for Mike Tomlin, but missing the playoffs. I am objective, my Pittsburgh Steelers. So listen, they're like a better version of Cleveland. That's how I see them this year. I think the roster is excellent. I love the Pittsburgh Steelers roster maybe more than most. Maybe that's just me being biased or being a homer, whatever. I think this offensive line's got progressively better. The Steelers, to their credit, have really, really invested in that O-line the last couple of drafts. I think it's going to continuously get better. Fatanu, the kid they took out of, took in the first round to add to this offensive line, really liked that pick by my Steelers. George Pickens, when he gets the ball in his hands, he is special. No other two ways around it. You got Calvin Austin, who's productive more as a returner than as a receiver. Deontay Johnson being on, I don't think will hurt this team that much. He, at times, the effort was a question at times with him. I love the Roman Wilson pick out of Michigan. I think he's going to bolster that receiving group. Najee Harris is Najee Harris. He's productive. He's good. Jaylen Warren, who's hurt to start the season, that concerns me. He'll get in the lineup, I think, be more of a valuable commodity, valuable piece to that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Defensively, it's a Mike Tomlin defense, so why in the heck should I have questions? You got TJ Watt, in my mind, the best defensive player in football. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties, if not the best safety in the NFL. And you just added from your biggest rival, the Baltimore Ravens, Patrick Queen. And you drafted a right linebacker in this year's draft. So the Steelers defense, for as great as it was a year ago, just got better. You have Joey Porter Jr. coming off a very, very successful rookie campaign, and I expect him to continuously get better. But there's still limitations at quarterback. And again, adding Arthur Smith, I thought was a really good get. There was a lot of teams, a quarter of the NFL wanted to hire Arthur Smith as their OC this past offseason. He's not a good head coach. He's a really good OC. But Russell Wilson is what Russell Wilson is. With Sean Payton, he was good, put up good numbers, 26 touchdowns, 9 picks. But there wasn't a whole lot of substance to those numbers, not a ton of shots down the field. Russell's declined as an athlete. To me, the Steelers should start Russ throughout the entire season. Again, knock on wood that he doesn't get hurt. Preserve Justin Fields. Keep Fields next year as either your backup or a trade asset and go get Dak Prescott. I think that's absolutely on the table. Frankly, I think that's what's going to happen. But my Steelers, Tomlin keeps the streak alive, but I am objective. The Steelers are not a playoff team in what's a stacked AFC. The number 2 team in the AFC North, you're like, oh, who is it? Is it Bengals? Is it Ravens? It is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens will go 10-7. They will make the playoffs. You see that little green playoffs right there. The Ravens will make the playoffs this season. So here's where I'm at with them. This Baltimore Ravens team, I think, did get worse this offseason. They lost Mike McDonald, who became the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. They lost, obviously, Patrick Queen. They lost Kyle Van Noy. They lost Jadeveon Clowney. That said, they still have some playmakers on that side of the ball. You still got Kyle Hamilton. You still got guys like Roquan Smith, highly productive. As a matter of fact, elite players on the defensive side of the ball. And again, outside of Cincinnati, the entire identity of this division is hard, tough-nosed, defensive football. The Steelers are, the Browns are, and gosh darn it, the Ravens certainly are in a major way. And then offensively, Lamar Jackson, I think, is the third best quarterback in football. He's the reigning league MVP. I still have questions about their weapons. Yes, they added Derrick Henry, and that does help. But A, Derrick Henry's getting 30, and running backs don't get better once they hit that age. And B, the Ravens running game is already good. So will Derrick Henry make it better? Sure, but not that much better. And I'm curious what their identity is going to be this season, because the narrative out of the AFC Championship game was, oh, they threw the ball too much against the Chiefs. Now they're kind of going back to what they were, which is a run-first team, which I thought was what they were trying to get out of. Listen, I think this game against Kansas City, which I will predict on Wednesday's show to start the year in Arrowhead, is gigantic for this team from a momentum's perspective. History shows when you lose to a team in the playoffs, they go on to win the Super Bowl, and you play them to start the next season and you lose, you oftentimes miss the playoffs. I don't think that's to be the case with the Ravens. They're too talented of a roster, too well coached, too well quarterbacked. The Ravens will be at number 2 in the AFC North. And then finally at number 1, that leaves the obvious. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. I got them going 12-5, obviously winning the division. I think the Bengals are going to be really good this year. It all obviously hinges on Joe Burrow. It hinges on Joe Burrow and his health, because when he is out there, he's the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. I think he's the second best quarterback in the NFL, obviously to Mahomes, and he's the only guy currently playing who has beaten Patrick in a playoff game, and did so obviously a few years ago at Arrowhead Stadium. I'm assuming Jamar Chase is going to be back sooner rather than later. I would not be shocked if a deal is done before opening day for the Bengals against the Patriots on Sunday. But this offensive skill position core, yes, they lost Joe Mixon. It's still really good. You still have Jamar Chase. You still have T. Higgins. You still got a good tight end unit. And Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. He's awesome. He's the second best QB in the league to Patrick Mahomes. Defensively, again, there's always question about the Bengals every year, but they've got a great defensive coordinator in Lou Morono. They're going to be good on that side of the ball, especially and we consider the fact that they play a Deshaun Watson or whoever quarterbacked Browns team twice a year, and a Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields quarterback team twice a year as well. I think the Bengals have a great year, go 12-5. I could see them maybe getting off to a slow start like they always do early in the season, but picking it back up. Again, knock on wood for Burrow. I think he'll be out there for the Bengals over the course of the season, and Cincinnati will win the AFC North. So that's what I got there. And again, the North has always been one of the toughest divisions to predict. It always has been. But I think we're in a situation with Cincinnati where it's a little bit, I've talked about with the Brandon Ayuk contract and kind of how that's handicapped the 49ers to a degree, and I'll get to San Francisco later, obviously, is that this feels a little bit like not a put up or shut up season, because the Bengals have gone to a Super Bowl with this group, but sort of a little bit like the Bills last year or a couple of years ago, where we have a window to compete for a Super Bowl this year, and next year, because of the T. Higgins contract, because of others, because of the fact that Mike Brown is the single cheapest owner in the NFL, we're going to have to pull back a little bit. We'll still be good. We probably still be a playoff team, but not quite to the level of the contenders in the AFC. I think that's gonna kind of hold back for the Bengals next year, not this year. I think the Bengals will win the AFC North. Let's see what we got. Jeff, everybody is doubting the Steelers because of Russell Wilson, but the Steelers made the playoffs last year with Kenny freaking Pickett. Russell Wilson is not great, and I will always trust Mike Tomlin. Well, again, I feel that way, and I was so back and forth with my Steelers, because I'm like, I don't want to let my objectivity get in the way of my love for my team. The way I thought of it was Pittsburgh won almost all of their games last year, save for a couple of nice performances by Mason Rudolph at the end of the season. It was all defense. Can we just hold them under 21 points? Hold the team under 21 points and be good situationally at the end. For as bad as Kenny Pickett was, and for as dreadful as Mitch Trubisky was, and for as limited as Mason Rudolph was, Rudolph and Pickett, by and large, didn't make a ton of mistakes in terms of turning the football over. Now, they weren't, especially Pickett, terribly talented. Arm strength wasn't really there. Mobility, it's just not real playmakers, the QB position. Is Russell Wilson better than those guys? Obviously, he's better than those guys. But from a fit perspective, I just don't think it works. He'll be good enough again to get the Steelers to their annual tradition, it seems like at this point, 9 wins, maybe 10 wins in a playoff spot. But I think this team is clearly next year going to have a new franchise quarterback, either that they draft or what I'm hoping / predicting, signing Dak Prescott in free agency. And I think Dak will be interested in the culture as well as the team and the coaching of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Jeff, thank you, Jeff, for hitting this point. And I should have brought this up. The Steelers' end of season schedule is literally straight from hell. Literally. So let's do the math here. So if you go from November 17th on, here's the Steelers' schedule. Against the Ravens, at the Browns, at the Bengals, against the Browns, at the Eagles, at the Ravens, against the Chiefs, against the Bengals. That is that's far and away the toughest schedule in the NFL down the stretch. And I don't think the Steelers will be good enough early in the season to give themselves the necessary padding for what could be a really, really tough late season stretch for Mike Tomlin's squad. So I got to be objective. I think the Steelers missed the playoffs this year. Let's move now to the AFC South and start with the last place team in the AFC South. Tennessee Titans. So again, this is going to be Tennessee's such an odd team. I really like a lot of the moves they made this offseason. DeAndre Hopkins can still play. We know what he's capable of doing. But you add Calvin Ridley. So you got that component with you. You add Tyler Boyd. You stole him from the Cincinnati Bengals in free agency. That's nice. They added probably the best upgrade in acquisition, L'Jarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs. You add L'Jarius Sneed and put him on your roster, who was probably the best cornerback in the league last year with the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. I really like some of Tennessee's moves. Here's what I hate. The two most important components of a football team every Sunday. Coach, quarterback. Brian Callahan may end up being good. I don't know. Here's what I do know. Vrabel's awesome. Vrabel is an excellent coach, and they moved on from him because of not a dispute, but a disconnect between him and the general manager. I hated that move by the Tennessee Titans. I thought it was a bad franchise-altering type of move for them. I think it'll come back to haunt them. And I don't buy Will Levis. Listen, I know he's got the new. Not only does he have the new mayonnaise commercials, but he's got there's like a mayonnaise Will Levis fragrance, which I don't know what grown man on this planet would think that's a good idea other than Will Levis. He'll enjoy his mayonnaise. He'll have a couple of games. He's got a monster arm where he will blow the socks off of the great people in Nashville, Tennessee. But the roster still has a lot of holes, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and Levis is not going to pan out. He's not terribly accurate. I have a lot of questions about his maturity. It's not going to work in Tennessee, but they'll be a fun 5-win team for what that's worth. At number 3 in the AFC South, I've got the Indianapolis Colts going 8-9. This was the hardest team to keep out of the playoffs. The more and more I sort of crunch numbers, breaking it down, doing certain predictions, looking at team schedules, it was really tough to omit the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson, again, is more like a more athletic Drake May, where I feel like his ceiling is sky high and his floor is in the dumpster. I think he's going to come closer to reaching a ceiling because Shane Steichen is a brilliant offensive mind. I still have questions about his accuracy. I like some of the pieces the Colts have offensively. They still got a good O-line. Michael Pittman Jr., they've got obviously Jonathan Taylor there still, but the Colts defense is easily bottom half in the NFL, and I think it's going to hurt them in a division with two guys, most folks believe one, I believe two quarterbacks in that division who are excellent. That's what's going to hold the Colts back. They've got the third best quarterback in that division. It's going to be hard for them to win a ton of games, in that predicament. Going to number 2 in the AFC South, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who returned to the playoffs after an absence at the end of last year. So the logic with Jacksonville is pretty simple, and I do have them going 10-7, by the way. The logic with Jacksonville is simple. Mid-season, week 13, the Jacksonville Jaguars had the single best record in the AFC. Better than Kansas City, better than Baltimore, better than Cleveland, better than Buffalo, better than Miami, better than everybody last year. The Jacksonville Jaguars. And then what happens? A Monday Night Football game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Trevor Lawrence hurts his ankle, and down goes the Jaguars season. Not to mention in the stretch where they went on to lose, I believe it was 4 of their last 5 games, the Jacksonville Jaguars were in a stretch where Trevor Lawrence hurt his shoulder and got concussed. So he hurts his ankle, shoulder, gets a concussion. Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say he's probably not going to play that well at the end of last season. Certainly at the way we saw him play 2 years ago at the end of the season to get the Jags in the playoffs by winning the division. I really like the Jags weapons. The Brian Thomas pick was really good out of LSU. They've still got Christian Kirk, who's productive, Travis Etienne, who's an excellent running back, and the defense is opportunistic. I'm not saying it's a great 3-and-out type defense, but it's a bend and don't break. They're good in terms of getting turnovers. And Doug Peterson is still a really, really good head coach from the Andy Reid coaching tree. He's a Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles, with Nick Foles, beating Belichick and Brady in that Super Bowl. So kudos to him. I think the Jaguars, even in a loaded AFC, do make the playoffs because when they're healthy, that's what Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence do. And that obviously leaves the Houston Texans as the AFC South champs. I've got them going 11-6, which some people may feel that's kind of low, maybe underrating the Texans a bit. I think there's a little bit, obviously last year, everybody other than my man Ryan Flowers underrated the Houston Texans, underrated CJ Stroud. I think this year there's a little bit of an overcorrection that there's this, they're the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. I don't feel that way. A threat? Yes, not the biggest threat. CJ Stroud's awesome. We saw what he did a season ago. with very low expectation for the Texans, not only gets in the playoffs, but wins the division, wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Will Anderson, the defensive side of the ball, wins Defensive Rookie of the Year, and D'Amico Ryans did a fantastic job last year with his side of the ball on offense and defense, and offensively they were really, really good as well. Tank Dell's back. They add Stephon Diggs, and Nico Collins is a very productive player himself, kind of the number one guy for the Texans. Dalton Schultz is a good tight end. And they've got a good running game with Dameon Pierce. So there's a lot to like about the Texans. My only concern with them is they just haven't been in that many battles quite yet. And when you're going against a team like Kansas City or a team like Cincinnati, like real battle-tested teams in the playoffs, I think that's going to potentially be their downfall this season. I got the Texans going 11-6. They do win the division, followed by the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Indianapolis Colts, and then finally the Tennessee Titans. Let's check the comments. Modern Dragon, pressure breaks diamonds. Indeed it does. Jeff, okay, and by the way, you're not alone in this, Jeff. Bryson, trust me, I think the Titans are a huge sleeper this year. I can see why you'd feel that way because, again, there are pieces that I do like. I like the fact that I think Tennessee has quietly one of the better wide receiving groups in the league with still, albeit an older, but still a very productive DeAndre Hopkins. You add Calvin Ridley in his prime, and you add Tyler Boyd, who's one of the best slot receivers in the game. I understand that. I just don't buy Levis. And now, listen, if Vrabel were still there, I'd think about putting in the playoffs. I really would. If they can get there with Ryan Tannehill, who's to say they can't get there with Will Levis? I just don't buy Levis, and Callahan's kind of a complete unknown. I don't attribute a ton of Joe Burrow's success with the Cincinnati Bengals to Brian Callahan. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Burrow regresses badly and Callahan goes on to be coach of the year. I don't know. I just don't see that happening. And Jeff says, Brian Thomas might be replacing Calvin Ridley, who's still really good, and I don't trust Trevor Lawrence. I got the Jags missing the playoffs, honestly. I understand that. And I don't think Brian Thomas is necessarily going to be step in and be Calvin Ridley. But with the veteran Christian Kirk, kind of a good mentor with the quarterback and Trevor Lawrence, who, I'm sorry, when he's got a great coach now in Doug Peterson. When he's healthy, he's a playoff winning quarterback. That's what, and it's brief. We've only seen 3 years of Trevor Lawrence, but from what we've seen, that's what we get. End of last season, Jags with a 1 seed. He goes down. Season goes up in smoke. Again, this is all of these picks are, of course, assuming that everybody's healthy. So that's why I got the Jaguars going 10-7 and making the playoffs. And finally, last division, the AFC. We're going to go to the AFC West and start with, to me, the obvious last place team in this division, the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to go 4-13. They're not a very good football team. So, look, Max Crosby is one of the 3 or 4 best pass rushers in the NFL with obviously TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Nick Bosa, as good as they come. And the Raiders defense, to their credit, improved drastically last year with Antonio Pierce, who ended up going from being the interim coach, and then because of the team's success, really surprising success in that stretch, nearly, kind of sniffing the playoffs to a certain degree, ends up becoming the full-time head coach. Here's my issue with the Las Vegas Raiders. They have the worst quarterback room in the NFL, and it's not even close. If Gardner Minshew is your starter, you're kind of screwed. Now, if Gardner's your backup, man, you're in good shape. Gardner's a really good backup, as we saw last year with the Indianapolis Colts. If Gardner's your starter, you're in bad shape. If Aiden O'Connell's your starter, you're in worse shape. Devontae Adams, I think, is going to get dealt at the trade deadline. Who knows? Maybe it's to the Jets. Maybe it's to somebody else. Who knows? It's not going to be the Chiefs. There's no way the Raiders are going to send him there to their division rival. Listen, Brock Bowers is a freak out of Georgia. I've seen the kid play in person. He's as good as advertised. He just doesn't have a quarterback throwing the ball right now. That's the issue for the Raiders. They lost Josh Jacobs in the offseason. I don't buy this team whatsoever to be one of the worst teams in the National Football League. Third place in the division this is kind of not a playoff sleeper, but a sleeper team that's going to kind of catch some people off guard. The Denver Broncos. They're going to go 8-9. They're not going to make the playoffs. I have questions about Bo Nix. I do. But he's with Sean Payton. Sean Payton makes anything work. So he gets Drew Brees. We all know the story. Drew Brees had the shoulder injuries. He teams with Sean Payton. And not to take any credit away from Drew Brees. He's one of, in my mind, the 10 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. But I do not see Drew Brees as a Super Bowl champion, record-breaking quarterback without the brilliance of Sean Payton, who, in his last year with the New Orleans Saints, after Brees retired, used 4 quarterbacks that season, and the Saints almost made the playoffs at 9-8. Listen, Denver is very thin. at wide receiver, but I do like some of their defensive pieces. They played a lot better defensively at the end of the season after obviously giving up 70 to the Dolphins in week 3 of 2023. Listen, if they can, to me, this is a reaction to what I think Russell Wilson's going to be with my Steelers, which is fine, and that nothing more than that. And Bo Nix, for some of the limitations I see, as well as some of the strengths I see, there's a reason he was a first-round quarterback. I think that duo will work, and I think the Denver Broncos could be a sneaky team this season. I think they're going to win a game against the Chiefs this year. I really, really do. If they can win a game last year with Russell Wilson against Patrick Mahomes, I think they can do so, albeit with a rookie. But Bo Nix with Sean Payton is a good tandem, a solid tandem in that division. The Broncos come in third place. In second place, and I think a team that is going to shock a lot of people, the Los Angeles Chargers, who are not only going to make the playoffs, but do so by going 12-5. And here's why. Justin Herbert, to me, is clearly one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the National Football League today. Arm strength is crazy. Accuracy is really good. Mobility's there. He's got the perfect, sort of frame to be a quarterback. He's 6'6", can see over the line. You've got Rashawn Slater coming back. The Chargers have really put an emphasis on bolstering the offensive line this year, adding Joe Alt in the draft, who's clearly the best offensive lineman in this past draft. Put him on the opposite side of Rashawn Slater. You obviously have the running game there, which Jim Harbaugh excels with the running game. And defensively, the Chargers were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year because Brandon Staley is probably the worst coach in the NFL a season ago. Jim Harbaugh, albeit he's an offensive guy, he's going to get that side of the ball fixed. You saw what Michigan was, albeit it's college football, but you saw what Michigan was throughout the course of last season and the course of Jim Harbaugh's time in Ann Arbor. And he's going to bring that culture. And here's what we know about Jim Harbaugh. He goes to San Diego State. They go from terrible to really good. He goes to Stanford. They go from being a joke in college football to beating Pete Carroll in USC and being not necessarily a national power, but a very respectable program. Then he goes to the San Francisco 49ers, a garbage franchise with a perceived bust in Alex Smith. NFC Championship in 2011, Super Bowl in 2012, NFC Championship game in 2013. And then he goes to Michigan, who was kind of average in what wasn't a very good Big Ten, turns them into national champions in his last 3 years there. They made the college football playoff and beat Ohio State all 3 years. I love Jim Harbaugh. I love Justin Herbert. Put them together. That Chargers team is going to do some special things this year. Again, I get that they don't have that number one guy at wide receiver. Maybe they add somebody at the deadline. Who knows? Maybe somebody steps up for them and shocks some people. I love this Chargers team coming into this season as a solid, rock solid playoff team. They will come in second, and that leaves the obvious. Number one is the Kansas City Chiefs. What are we talking about? 13-4. I think they'll slip up against the Broncos. They could lose a game potentially to a Cincinnati Bengals in week 2. I could see that occurring. I think they'll lose a game to the Chargers this year. But listen, and maybe lose to the Bills because the Bills always beat the Chiefs in the regular season. They just never beat them in the playoffs. Mahomes is a man out for revenge. Mahomes is out there in a situation where a season ago, the Chiefs, it was just because of the limitations at wide receiver. We got to play it safe. We got to not turn the football over, mistake-free football, and Mahomes kind of play a little bit of Tom Brady ball control in some respects, rely on our great defense, and they win the Super Bowl. Now, the defense, I thought, did get worse by losing L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans, but they replaced L'Jarius Sneed as the number one corner with Trent McDuffie, the number one corner, who was the best number 2 corner in the league last year, and actually outplayed Sneed in the Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers. So he is more than ready to take that number 1 spot as the Chiefs' best lockdown guy on the outside. They still got a great interior defensive line, headlined, of course, by Chris Jones, who they kept in free agency. And again, offensively, we know who Mahomes is. We know Andy Reid. Travis Kelce, while he may be getting a little bit older, is still a guy who's he may not feel like he's 22. There you go, Swifties. Necessarily, but still very productive. We saw what he did in the playoffs last year. The Chiefs wide receiving room, I still don't love, but it's better than last year by adding Xavier Worthy, who I didn't love out of the draft out of Texas, but hey, he's with Andy Reid and Mahomes. They can make him work. And you're able to add Hollywood Brown, who's never had elite quarterback play in his life. Again, excuse me, Lamar was not an elite quarterback early in his career. I think he is now. He's got Mahomes now. Kelce, of course, to take away take away some of the pressure on the inside, to create opportunities for guys on the outside. Listen, why in God's name would I bet against Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid? A defense is still really good. Spags is one of the best DCs in the NFL. I mean, come on. They're still great. Listen, there was, I remember a season ago, it was mostly by my man Nick Wright on FS1, who's obviously a diehard Chiefs fan. Shout out to Nick, was saying they're going to go 20-0. I thought that was crazy. I thought the Chiefs were going to win the Super Bowl. That 20-0 was a bit strong. But this is a 13-4 team. They got better, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, and they're out for blood. They're out for their third straight Super Bowl, of course, which I talked about at the top of the show. Has never been done before. Check the comments before we move to the NFC. Jeff says, love Max Crosby. He plays with one of the highest motors and never takes a playoff in the NFL. Hate these on such a bad team. He's right behind TJ Watt and Nick Bosa. I would alternate Bosa and put Myles Garrett in and then put Max Crosby. That's not shade toward anybody. They're all awesome. But Garrett's a freak. Watt is insanely fast. Again, I think the best defensive player in the league. And Max Crosby is kind of a mix of that. Again, like you said, crazy motor, can get to the quarterback. I'd love to see Max Crosby on a new team in 2025. I really would. But the Raiders, listen, there's 4 positions, or really 3 positions, the NFL you always pay if they're elite. Quarterback, left tackle, edge rusher. The 3 most valuable pieces on any football team. And the problem is the Raiders don't have a great left tackle. They have a terrible quarterback room. Max Crosby kind of a man by himself. So I do agree with you, though, there, Jeff. Oh, hell yeah, Bryson. A lot of people call me crazy for having the Chargers in the playoffs. I totally agree with your take on them. Listen, we got to stop doubting Jim Harbaugh. We do. I mean, I know, I understand he isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea. He's intense. I get it. He doesn't give you the regular quote unquote coach speech at the press conference. He's not that he's not politically correct. He's just, he's a different cat. He is. But you can't deny the results. Everywhere that he goes, he gets better and they win instantly. Why would I think that's going to change when he's going to the Chargers with a great quarterback in Justin Herbert? Again, I get the receiving core isn't great, but to a lesser degree, Kansas City's wasn't great last year and they won the Super Bowl. So, and we know Jim, and you saw the way he drafted this year. He loves to run the football. You're going to see that throughout the course of the season for the Chargers. All right, take a big sip of water. Now, let's move to the NFC. We're going to start in the NFC East. Do we have the NFC East loaded up right here? I think we do. Get this last graphic up here. Hang on. Let's see if we can get this on here. This one tiny graphic, which I'm about to show you, is not ready to go. Let's see. We good? Boom. All right. Starting the NFC East, I think the clear and obvious last place in that division in the NFC East is the New York Giants. They're a 4-13 team, and I think there's a chance Brian Daboll loses his job. And I say that as a guy who thinks Brian Daboll is as good as they come. But there's only so much he can do with Daniel Jones. Listen, the Malik Neighbors pick was great. Neighbors is going to be a really good player in this league, but the Giants are going to have a new quarterback in 2025. Some have floated Dak Prescott to the Giants. I hope that's not the case because I don't particularly trust the front office. I think Daboll gets fired. Listen, the Giants defense is actually quietly pretty good, particularly their front 4 is a really strong unit in the NFL, but they lose Saquon Barkley. Listen, I love Malik Neighbors. I love my man Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. They've got some pieces I like, but just Daniel Jones, God bless him, is... I always say, I talk about Gardner Minshew, low-end starter, high-end backup. I feel the same way about Justin Fields. I think low-end starter, high-end backup may border on generous for Daniel Jones. Listen, he grew the beard. Daniel Jones is a good-looking guy. Beard makes him look good, but he's coming off an injury, and his best season of his career, when the Giants made the playoffs 2 years ago, he threw 15 touchdown passes. And yet somehow got one of the biggest contracts in the NFL. Still can't figure that one out. So the Giants, obviously, will be in last place in the NFC East. At number 3, a team I consider putting in the playoffs, but decided to omit, the Washington Commanders at 8-9. So Jaden Daniels was one of my 3 favorite quarterbacks in this year's draft. I love Caleb Williams. I loved Michael Penix as kind of my 2 favorite guys. Jaden Daniels is kind of in that number 3 spot. Listen, we know the mobility he brings to the table. We saw it last year when he won the Heisman at LSU, and we know what the Washington Commanders have offensively. Brian Robinson Jr., really talented running back. They're able to, obviously we know they have Terry McLaurin on the outside, who's never in his life, with the Commanders at least, had great offense, had a great quarterback play. I really like what the Commanders have done in the last year or so, just organizationally, getting rid of Dan Snyder, bringing in this new ownership group, Josh Harris, Magic Johnson. They're going to turn around the culture of the Washington Commanders just as an operation, just as a business in a major way. And listen, I think Washington, give them 2 to 3 years, will be a really, really strong power in not just the NFC East, but I think the NFC. Dan Quinn's a really good head coach. He's gone to a Super Bowl, and they obviously got Cliff Kingsbury, who's a really good offensive coordinator. So he'll put the guys in position to succeed offensively. And for a Washington defense that isn't terribly talented, especially given up the fact that they gave up, obviously, Montez Sweat to the Bears, Dan Quinn always gets the defensive side of the football right, if you really take out the last year with the Atlanta Falcons. I like this Washington team. If they make the playoffs, I won't be in the slightest bit shocked, but I decided to take them out just barely. They go 8-9. At number 2 in the NFC East and missing the playoffs, the Philadelphia Eagles. They go 9-8, and they don't get in. This goes back, if we're talking about today's show, to what I said very early on today. The NFC is better and it is deeper than the AFC. What should I like about the Philadelphia Eagles? Oh, they have a great roster. Well, yeah, but they just lost Jason Kelce, the best player on their team and the leader of their team this offseason, who is still playing at an all-pro level. Jalen Hurts, who was great with Shane Steichen, took a big step back last year. Now the Philadelphia Eagles add one of the worst OCs in the league in Kellen Moore. Jalen Hurts is going to do some special things with Kellen Moore. Dak Prescott had the worst year of his career with Kellen Moore. Kellen leaves. Dak has the best season of his career. Kellen Moore then goes to the Chargers with Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert declines drastically after being fantastic the first 3 years of his career. Kellen Moore's a objectively bad OC. The Eagles defense, just by default, I would think, and adding Vic Fangio, who's, I think, an overrated DC, they'll be better defensively than they were a season ago, but last season they were probably the worst defense in football, so it's hard to get much worse than that. And Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts don't like each other. The articles have been scathing, but they have been well-sourced, and they've come from all over the place, which has to mean where there's smoke, there's fire, as my man Ryan Flowers would say. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, good chance it's probably a duck. That's what I look at with the Eagles. It's still a really talented team. They'll win games just off sheer talent. Again, the NFC is stacked full of really, really good squads. Philly had bad vibes. They played off. They were the worst team, even worse than Carolina record-wise. The worst team in the NFL from week 13 on. I think Philadelphia is going to take another step back. Sirianni gets fired, and there's big questions. I still really like Jalen Hurts, but there's going to be big questions about Jalen going into the 2025 season. And at number 1, obviously, that leaves the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this may shock some people because I have been, I think, harder than anybody in the national media, in the Cowboys fan base, than anybody on the Dallas Cowboys this offseason after, obviously, a disastrous playoff exit to the Green Bay Packers. Here's my logic for putting them at 11-6 and making the playoffs. Is that, do they have a guy who finished second for MVP last year in Dak Prescott? I believe they do. Did they sign CeeDee Lamb? Later than they should have, but did they sign CeeDee Lamb, who last year was the second best receiver in the league and only getting better each and every year? I believe they just did. Did the Cowboys have a great wide receiving core last year? Nope. Do they this year? Nope. So really no change. Did the Cowboys have a great running game last year with Tony Pollard? Nope. Did they have a good running game this year? Probably not. Rico Dowdle will end up being their best guy, and respect to Rico Dowdle, but he's Rico Dowdle. The O-line, I think, did get worse, which I think will, again, add an extra loss to Dallas in the regular season. Defensively, I do think they could get slightly better. The fact that Trayvon Diggs is back is huge for them. Losing Stephon Gilmore wasn't great, although Gilmore did kind of tail off at the end of the season. I do think the defense, though, will miss Dan Quinn. Adding Mike Zimmer. Zimmer's been a successful defensive coordinator in this league. Keep your eye out. Don't be shocked if there's at some point a controversy revolving around a dispute between Micah Parsons and Mike Zimmer. Don't be shocked in that. McCarthy's in the hot seat, but he's a better offensive coordinator, offensive play call than Kellen Moore was. So, listen, Dallas has their holes. Dallas has their flaws, which is basically everywhere in the receiving core, not named CeeDee Lamb. But I still like them to win the division because they have the best quarterback in the division by a comfortable margin. And just his connection with CeeDee Lamb. And Micah Parsons will be productive for 75% of the season until he tails off in December and January. Cowboys aren't a Super Bowl contender. I want to get that straight. They're not a Super Bowl contender. But Dak's too good. CeeDee Lamb's too good. listen, the offense wasn't talented last year, and they won 12 games and nearly got the 1 seed. They can win the NFC East this year, so that's where I got. Let's check the comments here. Jeff says, Bryson, Dak is really solid, don't get me wrong, but they are relying way too much on him this year. He's not Mahomes, Josh Allen. Dak has nobody running back he can hand the ball off to at all. I 100% agree with that. Listen, I have been the front of that train that the Cowboys have sabotaged Dak going back to 2022. But he's still gotten into the playoffs the last 2 years. If the expectation, and by the way, can I say this too? I'll get to your other comments, Jeff, but we could put up the graphic one more time. I think part of the thing that's going to really help the Cowboys, Dak Prescott has never been under less pressure than he is under this year. Dak knows he's going to get paid. Dak's getting, if Tua Tagovailoa can get paid, Dak Prescott's getting paid. Because the fact that he knows this is my last year in Dallas, and I'm just putting this out there right now, Dak Prescott will not be a Cowboy next year. He knows this team isn't good enough to win a Super Bowl. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to study hard. I'm going to put the work in. Play my best. I've still got an awesome player in CeeDee Lamb next to me. Not much else, but I didn't have much else last year. Make it happen once again this year. Make the playoffs. Do my thing. Go get money a year from now. I think the pressure on Dak, especially relative to what it's been really since he exceeded all of our expectations his rookie year, this is the least pressure Dak's ever been under. Cowboys can't win a Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? You can't win a Super Bowl. Roster's not good. Or I should say the defense got some players I like, but the offensive roster is simply not talented at all outside of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. Jeff, do you think Dak has his best year? He's a free agent next year, obviously. He also says Dak has nobody to throw to other than CD. Again, that was the same thing last year. I put up, I won't do it today because we got a loaded show, but I put up the CeeDee Lamb graphics about how he is infinitely better than, by the way, the entire Cowboys receiving core combined outside of CeeDee Lamb. So my issue with the Cowboys is the fact that they're a cheap franchise, not a well-run franchise with Jerry, and just wasn't willing to, as Jerry called it, go all in. But it's mostly the same team, minus some losses on the offensive line, which I think will hurt them. It's mostly the same team that they had last year. So Dallas will be good. They'll win their double-digit games. Philly will fall off again. Washington's not quite ready yet. The Giants are awful. By default, Cowboys win the division. Dak's by far the best QB in that division. So that's what I got. Moving on now to the NFC North, which I'm just going to put this out there right now. The best division in the NFL. For years, it was the AFC North. I think my division, my Pittsburgh Steelers division, the AFC North, has fallen to number 2. Let's go to last place in the NFC North. Last place, I think, is going to at least win 6 games in the Minnesota Vikings, going 6-11. So regardless if J.J. McCarthy was healthy or not, this is about where I had them. I really like a lot of pieces on this Minnesota team. We know who Justin Jefferson is. I think he's the best receiver in the sport. Jordan Addison has been, hasn't been the most mature guy in the world off the field, but on the field, he had a really, really productive rookie season. TJ Hawkinson, when healthy, is one of the better tight ends, top 10 tight end in the NFL. They did add Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers for what that's worth. Listen, as I said, running backs don't get better as they get older, but Aaron Jones is better than what they had last year in Alexander Madison. And then defensively, listen, Brian Flores has done a really good job at that defense. I like some of their draft picks, as you'll see a little bit later in one of my award predictions. But listen, there's still way too much limitation. And Kevin O'Connell, by the way, is a great, great coach. There's just too much limitations at the quarterback position. With Sam Darnold, even if it were J.J. McCarthy, I don't really buy McCarthy. The Vikings are going to be in a weird spot the next couple of years as the NFC gets better, as their roster gets better. I think the quarterback position got worse, obviously losing Kirk Cousins this offseason. So the Vikings will be a 6-win team. At number 3, and a playoff team, the Chicago Bears. So yes, the NFC North will have not 1, not 2, but 3 teams make the playoffs this year. The Chicago Bears, the Bears, will go 10-7 and come in 3rd place in the NFC North. So this is a team that won 7 games, 8 games a year ago. They upgrade drastically at the quarterback position, going from Justin Fields, who's a cool highlight reel, and that's pretty much where it ends, to Caleb Williams, who's, I don't know, one of the greatest quarterback prospects in the history of the National Football League. Awesome arm, awesome mobility, awesome accuracy, durability's there, maturity's there, leadership is there, everything you could possibly want in a prospect, Caleb Williams has. And he's got weapons. So DJ Moore, who got the bag, congrats to him, was already there and already really good. But then they had Keenan Allen in free agency. And then they draft Rome Odunze out of Washington, who I loved when he was in college with Michael Penix Jr. And then what do? They added DeAndre Swift to their running game. They've upgraded their O-line, still could use some pieces. I think that's, again, similar to the Cowboys in a way, minus the really good wide receivers. The offensive line will kind of hurt them in some games. Caleb can escape and make plays, but there's only so much he can do in that regard. Chicago's offensive line needs some help, but it will continuously get better. And defensively, again, Matt Eberflus, I still do kind of have questions about, but the Bears defense is really good. Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, they got some really, really elite players on that side of the ball. Listen, the division's crowded. It's really, really talented, but I think the Bears are good enough. Has any team gotten as much, maybe the Falcons have, but gotten better to the degree that the Bears have this offseason? I'm not sure there has been, and they were a sneaky potential playoff team last year. I think they're clearly a playoff team this year, double-digit wins, and they're the third-place team in the NFC North. Going to number 2, because the debate, a lot of folks, do the Packers win the division? Do the Lions win the division? I'm going with the Green Bay Packers to go 11-6. Of course, they make the playoffs as well. No quarterback, with the possible exceptions of Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford, played better over the second half of the season as Jordan Love did. If you look at from week 11 on, it was like from week 11 to their playoff loss to the Niners in the divisional round, it was like 23 touchdowns, 3 picks, passer rating in the 110s. I mean, he was great after I was highly skeptical. I didn't think they were going to be very good at all a year ago at this time, and I was very skeptical of Jordan Love, particularly at the halfway point of the season. He really showed me a lot. He showed me his arm strength. His command in the pocket got so much better over the course of the season, and that's a credit to him. It's a credit to Matt LaFleur, and that skill position group in Green Bay is low-key scary. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, they got some dudes at wide receiver. And again, Aaron Jones gone. A.J. Dillon, unfortunately, knock on wood for him, out for the season. So what do? Well, they didn't know Dillon was going to be gone, but they signed Josh Jacobs, who's still a very productive running back in this league, in free agency. They draft Marshawn Lloyd out of USC, who was really, really good with the Trojans. So the running game's still there. The O-line isn't as good as it was for, the majority of the Aaron Rodgers tenure. That's going to be up to the Packers to, grow and develop, and I think they will. Defensively, I have concerns, and that's kind of what held me back from picking the Packers to win the NFC North. But offensively, I think they're one of the 5 most talented teams in the NFL on that side of the ball. And that's what will put the Packers to continuously improve from last season and get into the NFL postseason. And of course, that leaves number 1, a team that I believed in before anybody else did. April of 2023, I picked the Detroit Lions to win the NFC North and to go to the NFC Championship game, which they did both. Why in the heck, ladies and gentlemen, why would I not believe in Detroit? Why would I not believe in a team that is continuously, year by year by year, just gotten better and better and better, improved more and more? As Dan Campbell once said in that press conference, of course, with a little Oprah Winfrey magic here. Kneecap. And that's their brand of football, particularly on their offensive line, which I think is the best unit in the National Football League in that, in terms of O-lines. Penei Sewell's great. Decker's great. They got so many great offensive linemen in Detroit to keep the pocket clean for a Jared Goff, who does need a clean pocket in order to be successful. But when that pocket is clean, he's one of the most productive quarterbacks in the league. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the most underrated receiver in the sport. Sam Laporta, I think by season's end, this is a kind of a bold prediction here. By season's end, Sam Laporta will be viewed as the second best tight end in the NFL, but in reality, he'll be the best. I think Sam Laporta is going to be better than Travis Kelce. I think he's going to be better than George Kittle. Throw out any tight end, Mark Andrews. This kid's it. This kid is legit right now for the Detroit Lions. I love what he did last year. Jahmyr Gibbs, we know what he brings to the table. And defensively, which is kind of the Achilles heel for the Lions, I think they got better. Terrion Arnold, I believe is the kid's name they drafted as the corner. Love that pick. Listen, we know the Detroit Lions front office. Brad Holmes, one of the best general managers in the league. Ben Johnson coming back this year to continue to be the offensive coordinator of this team was gigantic for this squad. I thought they could potentially pull back after that loss to San Francisco in the playoffs. Keeping Ben Johnson was huge for this team. So that's what I got in the NFC North. So I got three playoff teams in the NFC North. start with Philip. Go in the comments here. I really don't get the Bears hype. I don't think they win over 9 games. They will not make the playoffs. Their head coach is not good at all. I don't like them this year, but next year it could go better. I wouldn't say Eberflus is not good at all. Listen, I don't think Eberflus is a great coach, but I do think he's gotten his side of the ball right defensively. But of course, as the league transitions to more of an offense-centric league, as you get Caleb Williams because of one of the greatest trades in modern NFL history, the Carolina Panthers 2 years ago, that's going to continuously, be a story for the Bears this season, potentially next year. I don't think Eberflus gets fired unless they say, hey, we're going to go with the Ben Johnson. We're going to go with a proven guy like a Mike Vrabel. Who knows? But listen, I really, really like the Bears this season as a playoff team. Not only as like a team that's going to go to the Super Bowl or anything, but no team improved more in the NFL this year than the Bears. And last year, they could have easily made the playoffs had their quarterback played bit better. So that's what I got. Jeff, Jordan Love and his wide receiver room will win that division alone. He's by far the best quarterback in the NFC. Wow. And I'm so serious. I think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. They also had an incredible draft. They did have an incredible draft. I do agree with that. And their defense will be slightly better. I still do have questions on that side of the football. One of the most talented quarterbacks you've ever seen. Wow. That's high praise. And I'll say this, I defended the Packers paying Jordan Love. I thought that was a good move by them. I think him playing on the last year of his contract and that being a story, unlike the Cowboys, they actually want to nip that in the bud and get that out of the way. And again, I was a Jordan Love skeptic, but what I saw from him at the end of last season was special. He was great, efficient, didn't turn the ball over, with big plays down the field. If he continues to improve, it's going to be a discussion. Like, we know it's Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, Allen is the best 4. At number 5 is kind of going to be that CJ Stroud, Jordan Love. Like, it feels like they're going to be kind of doing a tug of war for that best quarterback in the NFL. Again, I still think Trevor. I still believe in Trevor. We'll see. I still believe in Dak. So those are kind of the guys who could be in that conversation as well. But if he replicates last year and the Packers do win the division as you think they will, Jeff, they could, watch out. So let's put that up one more time. NFC North predictions. So yeah, there you go. I got the Vikings. Again, Minnesota has too many weaknesses, too many limitations at the quarterback position. That's kind of what holds me back from picking them to do anything special this year. And then obviously for the Bears, offensively, they're special. Defensively, they're really good as well. Again, Eberflus is kind of what holds me back from picking them to do anything deeper. But that's what I got for Chicago. And for Green Bay, offense is one of the most talented in the NFL. I think they got the best young skill position group of receivers in the league. We saw what Jordan Love did. And listen, Green Bay, under Matt LaFleur, runs the ball pretty darn effectively. And we saw it at the end of Aaron Rodgers' tenure. Remember, Rodgers never had a running game with Mike McCarthy. That's not really McCarthy's MO. Gets Matt LaFleur, and they run the football effectively there in Jones. You're telling me they can't run it with Josh Jacobs? Oh, yeah. All right, 2 more divisions to predict. Then we'll get into award winners. Let's go to, what do we got? The NFC South. I think we got the NFC South coming up next for you. If we can get this little graphic right here to pull up. Here we go. We got the NFC South. All right. So there seems to be a general consensus on who the worst team in the NFC South is. And I get it. I disagree. I think the worst team in the NFC South, and therefore one of the worst teams in the National Football League, is going to be the New Orleans Saints. I think the Saints are going to be awful this season. So they barely eke out 9 wins. There was a lot of games last year with the Saints where just kind of, surviving games just based off of defense, even though the quarterback play, and I was a Derek Carr fan in the past, but I've seen the light. He's an average quarterback. Derek Carr's not going to play well. Dennis Allen is a bad coach. I think now he's the worst coach in the NFL now that Brandon Staley's gone. Alvin Kamara's getting older. I still like Chris Olave. There's some pieces in that offense I like. DeMario Davis defensively. Cam Jordan's still productive. This isn't a team that's getting older. This is a team that's spending way too much on a roster that simply isn't good. The vibes are bad. The fans won't even ask for Derek Carr's autograph. That's how bad it's gotten in New Orleans. Listen, I know this city is going to host the Super Bowl. They're not be hosting a whole lot of big games other than that. I think the Saints, you're going to see Spencer Rattler this season. That's my only big hot take on the Saints this year. Spencer Rattler will play meaningful snaps this year for the Saints. They, not the Panthers, will be the worst team in the NFC South, and obviously leaves the Carolina Panthers at going 5-12, getting one more win than New Orleans. Here's the thing with Carolina. Is there much to like about their roster? No. But Bryce Young, who I thought would be the second best guy a couple years ago, or rather the third best quarterback in the draft behind C.J. Stroud and my man Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. Bryce Young has a clean pocket. He's pretty good. Now, the problem is they don't have a clean pocket in Carolina. So you ask, then why are you picking them to go third? Dave Canales. Dave Canales was the offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, kind of helped revitalize Baker Mayfield's career, got Baker Mayfield a nice contract. Okay, and Baker deserves credit for that too, but that was kind of a nice little tandem there in Tampa Bay. Dave Canales also has a history in Seattle. He was the receivers coach there, worked with some of the offensive guys, but what's the common denominator? Seattle with Russell Wilson, Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, now Carolina with Bryce Young. What's the common denominator? Small quarterbacks. Well, Bryce Young fits that mold perfectly. Again, I'm not saying this team's going to do anything special. They're not. I think the Panthers owner, David Tepper, is not only in over his head, but just does not know what he's doing. So this Panthers team is not very good, but I think Canales is a really, really talented young coach. Bryce still has some things I like about him, and I think Canales will get the absolute best. He'll squeeze every single juice out of this orange, and it's not a very big one with the Carolina Panthers. So they won't be dreadful like they were a year ago. They'll be the third best team in the division and better, I think, than the New Orleans Saints. At number 2, I've got the Buccaneers taking a little bit of a step back at 7-10. So listen, we saw what Baker did a year ago, but as you just heard me say, Dave Canales is gone. Mike Evans, for as productive as he is, and I think is a sneaky, look at the number, sneaky Hall of Famer, 1,000 yards in every single season of his career. Come on. The wide receiving core is getting older. Todd Bowles is a good defensive coach, does not specialize whatsoever in the offensive side of the ball. So with Canales gone, Baker will still be good. The Tampa Bay will still, maybe they could steal an upset here or there from Atlanta or from another team in the NFC, but a first-place schedule with a roster that almost by default is second best in a terrible NFC South. I just don't buy the Buccaneers this year. They'll still have a good defense because they always have a good defense, but this has always been an offensively challenged franchise. I think they don't make the playoffs this year at 7-10, and that leaves, obviously, to me, one of the easier division winner predictions in the Atlanta Falcons, who I think will go 11-6. So, look, we know the addition of Kirk Cousins. That is a drastic upgrade from what they've had, really, since the end of Matt Ryan's prime. Listen, Kirk is getting older, 36, 37, coming off an Achilles injury. That's a concern. I get that. But again, by default, better than what they had. And also, huge for the Atlanta Falcons. They upgraded their head coach in bringing in Raheem Morris. And we know Sean McVay, and he does have a very big coaching tree, but look at what Kevin O'Connell's done in Minnesota. We see what some of these guys are capable of from those Rams coaching staffs. I really like what Raheem Morris can be able to do, kind of trying to fix that defense for Atlanta, which, by the way, within the last month, added Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons to what I thought was a defense that was slowly improving, getting better, and really keeping them in a lot of games. They just had Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke out there stinking up the joint. Kyle Pitts, this is finally, we've been waiting for it. This is going to be his breakout year. Bijan Robinson is special with the ball in his hands. I'm a big Drake London fan. Great number 1 receiver on the outside. Listen, Atlanta will lose some questionable games here or there because that's kind of what they do. Atlanta's a very weird team, but they're clearly the most talented team in this division, potentially the best coach team in this division. And I should say by a long shot, because Baker's still good, but I still say pretty comfortably the best quarterback in the division in Kirk Cousins. That's what I got. Atlanta wins the division 11-6, followed by Tampa at 7-10. Carolina, not the Saints, at 5-12 because of Canales. And the Saints, I think, will be awful. There's always one team that feels kind of middle of the road and there's absolutely nosedives. I think that's going to be the Saints. I think they're going to be absolutely positively dreadful. And next year, listen, they may try Spencer Rattler next year if they like what they see from him this year, because I do think he'll play snaps. Or they could draft Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers. Is Drew Aller eligible for next year's draft? Because I really like Drew Aller out of Penn State. We'll see, but let's just put it this way. And I've been a Derek Carr guy for a long time. Still love Derek Carr, the human being. And he did some good stuff from time to time with the Raiders. He's an average quarterback. He is. And the Saints roster is older, horribly coached. Dennis Allen will be fired midseason, maybe early season. Who knows if it goes bad, if it starts bad enough, which I think it very well could. All right, finally, last division we're predicting. Let's move to the NFC West, which is a very interesting division. Last place, I think, feels pretty obvious, but still, I think, a respectable 4-13 squad in the Arizona Cardinals. So look, I get it. It's 4 wins. They repeat what they did a year ago. I just don't buy the defense at all, particularly the defensive line, who's not good at all at stopping the run. Jonathan Gannon, who I was skeptical of and still have some skepticism about whether he'll be able to pan out long-term in Arizona. They kind of go through coaches and quarterbacks like crazy. The defense played better last year, but again, stopping the run is not their forte. Kyler's really talented. He's, knock on wood, going to be healthy over the course of the season. And they got one of the best wide receiver prospects in the history of the league in Marvin Harrison Jr. So those two will make a really dynamic combo. But for Arizona, it's, again, too many holes in the roster, not much of a running game, can't stop the run. If you get beat up in the trenches consistently, you're not going to win a whole lot of football games in the National Football League. So the Cardinals, to me, pretty clear last place team in the NFC West, but nonetheless a fun team to watch. Going now, kind of like the Bears were 2 years ago, by the way. The Bears won like 3 games, but we're a fun watch every Sunday. I think that's going to be the Arizona Cardinals. Moving on to the third place team in the division is the Seattle Seahawks at 8-9. Seattle was a team that I very much considered putting in the playoffs as that last team in. I decided to keep them out for really one reason only, and I don't want to sound harsh because I genuinely like him, Geno Smith. The Seahawks have the best trio in my mind in the NFL of receivers. Maybe second best to the Chicago Bears in DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think they have an excellent running game with Kenneth Walker, an offensive line that, while it has its limitations, is a lot better, and that was kind of Pete Carroll's blind spot, better now than it was under Pete Carroll most of his tenure in Seattle. Defensively, I mean, could you ask for a better match made in heaven? Mike McDonald and some of those young guns on the Seahawks defense. Geno's a good quarterback. He's kind of average. The arm is there. The accuracy is really there. Passer rating, we know what he did a couple of years ago in getting the Seahawks to the playoffs. I think this is too strong of a conference, too strong of a division with the top 2 teams above Seattle. They'll be good. They'll win some games. They'll go 8-9. But I think the Seahawks are a quarterback away potentially from being really, really scary next year moving on. Geno Smith, respect to him for really, kind of revitalizing his career. He's just not that guy. Moving on to number 2, I've got the 49ers, not the Rams, the 49ers at number 2. And yes, they obviously make the playoffs. They do go 11-6 though, so I'm actually taking a win off of what they did a year ago. Here's the thing with San Francisco. So they clearly have the best roster in the NFL. I still think, bar none. Detroit's close, but I think San Francisco's got the best. Here's the issue with the Niners. Trent Williams is not in the building right now. That's a problem. He's the best left tackle in the league, and the Niners' offensive line isn't great. Trent Williams is going to need to be there for them to be successful and to protect Brock Purdy. They're able to keep Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel's there, obviously, though, with some injury concerns. The same could be said about Christian McCaffrey. But this Brock Purdy thing is weird. So he gave the quote early in training camp. He's trying to rip into teammates more, and he's trying to be more like Tom Brady and rip the hearts out of the chest of his opposition. Okay, that's not when Purdy is at his best. That's not when the Niners are at their best. Look, their defense will be great because it's always great because their defensive line is the best in the National Football League with Nick Bosa, with Eric Armstead, with some of the guys they got in the interior of that defensive line. And the back end of their defense is still solid. Charvarius Ward, my man, Hufanga coming back this year from injury. I'm a huge Talanoa Hufanga fan. Love the kid. Love how he plays the game. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, we're going to see if he comes back and what he looks like when he comes back from obviously that terrible, horrible luck injury he had in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Shanahan's still awesome. He's one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in the league in my mind. But Purdy still has the limitations. I think there's odd vibes. There's very much a last dance kind of feel for the 49ers because of they've already got a lot of big contracts as is. The Ayuk contract, given the fact they're going to have to pay Purdy a year from now, just complicates things all the more. Again, just based off elite coaching and an elite roster, the Niners will still be an obvious double-digit win team, clear playoff team. I got this as the number 1 wild card team in the NFC this year. But the limitations at quarterback is going to be something to watch. And how Purdy plays is a really sneaky big story coming into this NFL season, given what the expectations, of course, are for San Francisco. And that, of course, leaves number one seed in the NFC West, or number 1 team in the NFC West, the Los Angeles Rams. So just about my only concern with this team is Matthew Stafford's health. If Matthew Stafford's there, healthy, ready to go, given how he played at the end of last year with the weapons that they've got, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, who was a godsend last year with the run game, LA's offensive line, it got a lot better from where it was a couple of seasons ago when it felt like they were in a little bit of a retooling period. Listen, defensively, they did lose Aaron Donald. That's obviously a massive loss for the Los Angeles Rams. Here's the thing, though. I think this is key for the Rams this year. Their first-round pick, okay, being able to bring in their first-round pick this season, Jared Verse from Florida State. Great college player, and they need that elite edge rusher for them this season. We know what they have in terms of, their linebacking core is one of the most talented groups in the league. Sean McVay is, again, top 5 coach in the NFL. He always has a great staff. Les Snead, if Les Snead wants to add Devontae Adams at the trade deadline, don't be shocked. There's not much not to like about this Rams team. And again, the difference between me picking the Rams and me picking the Niners is the quarterback position. If it comes down to Matthew Stafford, Brock Purdy, respect to Purdy, Stafford's way better. So Matt Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams reclaim their spot as the best team in the NFC West this season. So that's what I've got. Before we move to the comments, I got some comments here. Let's go and look over what I've got before we get to awards. My predictions for the AFC playoffs and the NFC playoffs. So show the AFC right here. The Chiefs will be the 1 seed, winning the AFC West. The Bengals will be the 2 seed, winning the AFC North. The Texans will be the 3 seed, winning the AFC South, and the Bills will be the 4 seed, winning the AFC East. And the 3 wildcard teams will be a scary good Chargers team, a team in Jacksonville that's flying way too low under the radar right now as the 6th seed, and the Ravens take a big step back, but they're still too talented, too well coached, and too well quarterbacked to miss the playoffs. I've got them in as that last team, the 7 seed in the AFC. To the NFC now, I've got the Detroit Lions. My Detroit Lions, to a certain degree, as the number 1 seed, winning the NFC North, the toughest division in football, and getting that top seed in the conference. They're followed by the Rams, the 2 seed, Los Angeles Rams, the 2 seed, winning the NFC West. The Dallas Cowboys do win the NFC East. First time a team's won that division back-to-back years in 2 decades. Cowboys win the NFC East. They're the 3 seed. Atlanta Falcons win the NFC South. They're the 4 seed. And the three wildcard teams will be the San Francisco 49ers, the Green Bay Packers, and the Chicago Bears. So that's what I got. And by the way, again, I should have emphasized this earlier to start the show. When I make these picks, hold me to it 100%. Like, these picks are set in stone. There's no going back. There's no changing any of these picks. This is what I've got. So there you go. I'm sticking to them. Check the comments. Oh, I knew Jeff wouldn't like this. Oh, come on, Bryson. The Rams are not beating us out for the division. Brock Purdy has the best come-from-behind game in NFC Championship game history against a great Lions team using his legs and mobility. Limited quarterbacks don't do that. Trust me, Brock is not a game manager. Here's what I would say to you, Jeff, is that, and by the way, I appreciate you bringing up Brock Purdy's mobility, because that's something I actually don't think he gets enough credit on. And the one, because I get pegged a Purdy hater, I'm not. The Purdy haters say that Purdy is a carbon clone of Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not. He's way better than Jimmy G. I don't think Jimmy G is very good. I feel totally different about Purdy. Here's the thing about that NFC Championship game, Jeff. Here's the problem with that. Is that the Detroit defense was not very good. It was always their Achilles heel. And the play that turned the game. What was the play that turned the game? 49ers Lions. It was the Brandon Ayuk catch, right? When Purdy kind of threw a moon ball near, inside the 10-yard line near the goal line, it should have been picked. It might have been Brian Branch, who I really like, by the way, who was on the back end of that defense. Ball goes through his hands, somehow lands in the arms of Brandon Ayuk, and that really flipped the momentum of the game. And Detroit still almost won. Is that we saw Purdy in that playoff game against Green Bay. Until the last drive, when he was great, he was dreadful. Like, Purdy was great in that last drive. Before that, he was awful. There's a lot of drop picks. The Packers should have won that game. Also in the Detroit game. Not to take credit away from him, because that comeback, the next day I came to the show, I said I was highly impressed. Down 17 at halftime, kudos to him. But that Lions defense was not good. And by the way, sometimes, look at the Tom Brady, Julian Edelman play in that Atlanta Super Bowl. Sometimes it's weird, fluky plays like that change the momentum of a game. And in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, Purdy did not play poorly. But he also didn't play great. And the Niners needed him to be on some key third down situations in the fourth quarter and in overtime, and that's what kind of did them in. And by Jeff, he says if he's a game manager, then he is by far the best game manager maybe in NFL history. Sure. I can maybe get on board with that. Now, I shouldn't say in NFL history, because back in the day, there used to be some really, really loaded rosters that had, what's a team that comes to mind? Maybe Phil Simms with the Giants. Who else? Think of another team. Aikman wasn't a game man. Aikman was better than a game manager. I think Aikman's slightly overrated, but yeah. Brady was a game manager of the Patriots' first Super Bowl, not the other ones, but the first one when they beat the St. Louis Rams in the Super Bowl. But listen, I'm not saying the Niners are going to miss the playoffs or anything, but the vibes feel weird going into this year. There's questions about how they're going to make this work beyond this year. I'll tell you right now, because I think I'm making this prediction under the assumption Trent Williams is coming back. If he doesn't come back, that team's in trouble, like serious trouble. Because I think last year PFF had the Niners as like the 21st best O-line in the league last year with Trent Williams, with easily the best left tackle, not in the league, but maybe in NFL history. They need him back, and I think they'll get him back, but they need him back soon, and very soon. Okay, so there you go. So that's my predictions for each and every one of the divisions. So there you go. I feel great about all of them. There's a couple where I kind of flip-flop back and forth. For the record, I went back and forth on the Niners-Rams thing. I love both rosters. I love both coaches. But Purdy Stafford is kind of what tipped the scales. Because respect to Purdy, but he is not Matthew Stafford. Not many are. Matthew Stafford's one of the most talented quarterbacks that we've seen. Okay, if I can pull up these graphics here super fast for our award predictions. Let's see what we've got, because I want to predict all 7 award winners in the NFL quickly. Then we'll move to playoff predictions before we get out of here. As with those low, I think we have another comment here. I don't agree with that, Jeff. He says Rams defense is pretty bad. They didn't play that bad at the end of the season. Now, again, the loss of Aaron Donald is really concerning, but the Jared Verse pick out of Florida State was huge. They still have a solid pass rush. Their linebacking core is good. I think that's going to be something that helps them this season. And listen, if there's any team that can get a team ready to go, it's Sean McVay. All right, so we'll start with Coach of the Year. So we'll go backwards and move our way to MVP. Coach of the Year will be my man, Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh will win Coach of the Year. He's going to take a Chargers team that was dreadful last year, has underachieved, feels like my entire life watching football, and take a team that's actually going to overachieve, given a roster that I feel like is kind of average, kind of middle of the road. But Herbert's a great quarterback. Harbaugh's a great coach. Literally every situation he goes to, not only does he win, but he wins immediately. And that's going to be the case right now this season with the Chargers. The defense will improve drastically. They'll run the football better. LA Chargers are going to be the shock team of the NFL, a 12-win squad, barely coming in second to Kansas City in that AFC West. Jim Harbaugh will win Coach of the Year. Speaking of the Chargers, let's get another award to a Los Angeles Charger. The Comeback Player of the Year will be Justin Herbert. So this is going to be a weird one, because I was looking at the Comeback Player of the Year odds. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers is the betting favorite. Russell Wilson was in there. Kirk Cousins. Joe Burrow was in there. Listen, I think Burrow's going to have a great year, but because Joe Burrow's already won Comeback Player of the Year, I think that's going to factor in voters' decision-making. Kirk, I think, will be good, just not as good as Justin Herbert, who I think is kind of a monster year. Justin Herbert, even if he didn't get hurt last year, he should get Comeback Player of the Year just for coming back from having to deal with Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator a season ago. Getting Jim Harbaugh, getting a great Harbaugh staff. You're going to see some of the best Herbert we've ever seen, despite, by the way, not having a true number 1 wide receiver, which I think they'll get next year. The Chargers are going to be a really, really, really special team this year. And so I think their coach will win Coach of the Year, and their quarterback will win Comeback Player of the Year. Let's go to the rookies. Let's start defensively. The defensive rookie of the year, I think, is going to be Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner from the Minnesota Vikings will be your defensive rookie of the year. I thought about Jared Verse for the Los Angeles Rams. I thought about Terrion Arnold for the Detroit Lions. I decided to go with Dallas Turner. This kid's speed off the edge, his instincts, his quickness are something to behold. I saw him play, I never saw him play live, but I saw him play obviously on television at the University of Alabama. He is the classic around the edge, 3-4 style pass rusher. He's excellent. Again, speed gets to the quarterback. And again, the fact of the matter is the Vikings are going to be a lot of dogfight games. Their defense are going to have to kind of bail out what I think is a limited quarterback situation. As I talked about earlier, Dallas Turner is going to be the focal point of that Vikings defense under Brian Flores. So I think he will win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, this is easy. It's Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is clearly going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. So again, he is... To me, an underrated story with the Bears this year is that Caleb is going into the best situation that any first-round quarterback or first overall pick quarterback has gone into maybe in NFL history. He's going to a team that didn't get the first pick just because they were bad. They got it because they traded with another bad team, Carolina, is the fact that they have a loaded receiving core, an excellent defense to kind of back them up, which you didn't have at USC, a good running game, and improving offensive line. And in terms of talent, the kid's got literally everything. Arm strength, mobility, accuracy. I think he's really taken on a leadership role in that Bears locker room. I think he's going to do really special things. And I've said, I think Caleb is going to be, by the end of his second year, universally considered a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I think he is that special. So Caleb Williams will be the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Am I missing any awards? Are we going to go to Offensive Player of the Year? All right, let's go to Offensive Player of the Year. This may catch people by surprise, but we got to give out another Los Angeles Team Player Award, but it's going to go to a Ram. Puka Nacua will be the Offensive Player of the Year, and it's going to be very reminiscent. Maybe not exact in terms of the number comparison, but very close to what Cooper Kupp did a few seasons ago when he had probably the greatest receiving season in NFL history, winning the Triple Crown for receiving in terms of catches, yards, and touchdowns. I'm not saying Puka Nacua is going to win the Triple Crown, but I love what this guy brings to the table. Physicality, route running is as exquisite as they come. And you pair him up with Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. I mean, we saw what he did a year ago. He was special. He was one of the surprise players in the league in terms of rookies. Some argued he should have won over C.J. Stroud for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to get his own award this year, winning Offensive Player of the Year for a Rams team that I think, especially offensively, is going to be really, really strong. To Defensive Player of the Year, same pick I made a year ago, and darn it, I'm not backing off. The man whose jersey I'm wearing, T.J. Watt. The best defensive player in the National Football League, who was, with respect to Myles Garrett, robbed of Defensive Player of the Year a season ago. He's going to lead the NFL in sacks. Who knows? He may get 20. He may threaten Michael Strahan's record or maybe tie it, just like he did back in 2021. This guy is speed off the edge, the agility. He's a great fourth quarter player. Even had a touchdown last year, a pick last year. He's going to do all that again. Okay, TJ Watt and that Steelers defense, because of a limited quarterback situation for my Steelers, is going to have to win us some games this year, and TJ Watt is going to do what he always does, and that is be a game-wrecking player. Whew! TJ Watt's going to be DPOY. And finally, to MVP. Look, my MVP pick may feel like a chalk pick. I own that. Patrick Mahomes has given me no reason why I should bet against him. None. So he certainly didn't have anything close to an MVP caliber regular season in terms of his statistics a season ago. A lot of that was because of the 44 drops that the Kansas City Chiefs led the league with. But again, man on a mission, voted the 4th best player in the NFL, 2nd best quarterback in the NFL by his peers. The fact that he is chasing Tom Brady, he's got a long way to go to catch Tom, but he's got that internal motivation, the Kermit the Frog nonsense, the fact that no team in NFL history has ever three-peated, that weight is on his shoulders, and there's anybody who loves pressure, it's Patrick Mahomes. I think he's going to put up a monster season. Give me 38 touchdown passes, like 10 interceptions, could lead the league in pass rating for all I know. This guy is going to blow the league open once again. Patrick Mahomes will be your league MVP. So that's what I got. Interesting. Jeff, this is interesting. He says comeback player of the year should be my man Ricky Pearsall if he plays this year. Listen, prayers to the highest for Ricky Pearsall. Obviously suffered a gunshot wound over the weekend. I think it was like a robbery attempt or something like that. Prayers for him. He gets better. Thank God he's even still with us right now. Thank the good Lord above. And listen, if he plays, I thought DeMar Hamlin was absolutely robbed last year in a major way for winning comeback player of the year. If Ricky Pearsall is able to play this year and play well, which, I mean, come on, he's got Kyle Shanahan. He's got the weapons or other guys around him. He can make a pretty big impact. Yeah, I could see that, Jeff. I think there's a scenario in which that happens. Jeff, Nacua for Offensive Player of the Year is a sneaky good pick. I'm telling you, listen, I liked what I saw from this kid, and When you talk about the tandem, Stafford, McVay, I mean, could a young receiver ask for a better tandem than that? Yeah, Jeff, spot on. Thanks for the prayers for Ricky. What a warrior he is. That's the God's truth. My gosh. Hey, kudos to him, and thank God he's still with us, and prayers he continues to get better. So that's my award predictions. And I'm going to, load the predictions for the playoffs, which I'll go through pretty quickly the first 2 rounds and then kind of elaborate more on the NFC and AFC championship picks. And of course, the biggest prediction of all, who wins the Super Bowl. So let me get these graphics on here real quick. First of all, as I'm doing this, appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to watch this. This is always one of my favorite shows of the year. I normally do it with Ryan Flowers. Our schedules just couldn't align this year, which really stinks, but I love Ryan. He knows that. Hopefully I might be able to get him on the show on Friday to be able to react to the Chiefs-Ravens game, which, cannot wait for that. But Ryan should be on, or could potentially be on Friday. If not, we'll get him on as soon as possible. Host of Clutch Sports Talk. Go subscribe to his channel right now. He's the best guy in the world. He's as smart of a football mind as you will find. So definitely check out my man Ryan Flowers, and hopefully we can have him on the show sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, our schedules today on this Labor Day just could not align, but definitely want to get him on in the future because Ryan's the best. So, those who know Ryan know he's a great guy. Okay. Oh, looks like we're missing a graphic. Let's go and put that up there. All right. Sorry, I'm just getting this little AFC graphic up on the screen. Okay. So you saw my AFC playoff teams. So the matchups will look like this. And you already see, by the way, who I'm going to pick to win these games. So here you go. The 2-seed Bengals will beat the 7-seed Ravens. It'll be the second time in 3 years the Bengals beat the Ravens in the playoffs, and the Bengals will move on to host a divisional round playoff game. Big upset here. Trevor Lawrence and the Jags beat their division rival on the road, CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, and Trevor Lawrence regains the title as the best quarterback in the NFC South. Frankly, I still think he's there right now, but that's what's going to happen. Listen, the Jaguars beat the Texans in a big game last year in Houston. I think they're going to do that again. A healthy Trevor means success for the Jaguars. Jaguars will shock the Texans, end their season prematurely, and move on to the divisional round. And I think the Chargers, you heard me early in the show, I think they're going to be really special. The 5-seed playing the Chargers going the 4-seed Bills. It's going to be cold in Buffalo, but I'm going to roll with Herbert to beat Josh Allen in that game. Don't be shocked if Sean McDermott loses his job after that particular playoff game in freezing cold Buffalo, New York. But that's what I got. So the 2-seed Bengals beat the 7-seed Ravens. 6-seed Jaguars upset the 3-seed Texans, and 5-seed Chargers beat, and to a certain degree, upset the Buffalo Bills. Moving on now to the NFC. Let's look at the NFC wild card predictions. What do we have here? Okay, and you'll see what I have for each game. The 2-seed Rams beat the 7-seed Bears. I love what the Bears have right now and for the future. They're just not ready quite yet. Rams win, host the playoff game. The Cowboys get revenge. Dak Prescott in particular gets revenge. The 3-seed Cowboys beat the 6-seed Packers, who I think have a better team. But listen, Dak has had to hear about that playoff game for 8 months. And by at this point, an entire year. That is going to stick in his craw. The Packers still have a very susceptible defense. Dak and CeeDee Lamb, unlike they were last time these two teams played, will be on their P's and Q's, ready to go, and they will torch the Green Bay Packers defense, and they will win a wild card playoff game. And finally, the 5-seed 49ers will beat the 4-seed Atlanta Falcons. San Francisco, as good as Atlanta is, San Francisco will probably be favored in that game, I have to imagine. I mean, who knows how the course of the season will play out, but I have to imagine that it would look something like that. So I'm going to go with the 2-seed Rams to beat the 7-seed Bears, the 3-seed Cowboys to beat the 6-seed Packers, and the 5-seed 49ers to beat the 4-seed Atlanta Falcons. Let's move on now let's go back to the AFC and look at the AFC divisional round, and you'll see what I have predicted here on the screen. The 1-seed Chiefs beat my man Trevor Lawrence in the second round. The 6-seed Jaguars, kind of Cinderella run to a certain degree, comes to an end in Arrowhead Stadium for the second time in 3 years. Kansas City gets back to their old ways of getting to the AFC Championship game because they literally do that every single year that Patrick Mahomes is there. And the 5-seed Chargers go to Cincinnati and upset the Bengals, and the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, with Justin Herbert, get to the AFC Championship game. Cincinnati's season goes up in smoke in the second round, and a lot of questions for the Bengals in the offseason. So that's what I got for the divisional round in the AFC. Let's go to the divisional round in the NFC, where the number 1 seed, in an adoptive sense, Detroit Lions beat the 49ers. They get revenge, this time on their home turf with a week of rest, a bye. Jared Goff plays great. The Lions defense far better now than it was a year ago. The Lions will win, and Detroit, you will host the NFC Championship game at home in Ford Field, and you will face your old quarterback, Matthew Stafford. The Rams will beat the Cowboys. 2-seed Rams beat the 3-seed Cowboys. That'll probably feel like a Cowboys home game to a certain degree in SoFi Stadium, but the Rams are a far more talented roster than Dallas and a far better coach team than Dallas. So the Cowboys season, once again, the streak will continue. They will not reach the NFC Championship game. The Rams will do so, and do so for the first time since they won the Super Bowl a couple of seasons ago. So quickly before we get to conference championship games, Jeff's a little skeptical. He says, okay, I'm high on the Chargers, but then making the AFC Championship game and beating the Bengals to get there is tough. I'm telling you, what Chargers Super Bowl odds, and you'll see my predictions for their game against the Chiefs in just a second. Wouldn't be the worst bet in the world. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't know what the Chargers Super Bowl odds are right now. I don't imagine they're on par with the upper echelon contenders or perceived contenders in the NFL, but just saying, Chargers are going to make some noise this year. Okay, I love what I see from them. So let's look at the AFC Championship game. You can put up there on the screen right there. Division rivalry, Herbert versus Mahomes, 5-seed Chargers, 1-seed Kansas City Chiefs, the defending back-to-back Super Bowl champions. And do Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert dethrone the dynasty, the Kansas City Chiefs? No, they will not. Kansas City will win this game. The Chargers, again, I said Cinderella season about the Jaguars. It's going to feel maybe more like that to the prognosticators and pundits and analysts out there. Chargers are here to stay. Make no mistake about it, but just not quite enough. They're not quite ready to knock off the dynasty. Mahomes, Reed, Kelsey, Chris Jones, all the key groups, Taylor Swift, all of them are going to be headed to their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl in New Orleans, Louisiana. The Chiefs, once again, will be the AFC champions. Once again, they will beat the Chargers. Again, I love the Chargers. I don't love them quite that much. I think they'll split with the Chiefs in the regular season, win one fewer game than the Chiefs over the course of the regular season, and meet them in the AFC title game, and the Chiefs will win in Arrowhead Stadium. Now let's look at the NFC Championship game, which is a rematch of the wild card round last year, opening Sunday Night Football, NBC this year, and we will see it in the NFC Championship game. The 2 best teams in the conference, in my mind. The 2-seed Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford coming home, playing his old team in the Detroit Lions, who he used to play for the first 12 seasons of his career, the number 1 pick back in 2009, and the winner of the NFC title game, where the Rams get there for the first time since they won the Super Bowl. Do they get to another Super Bowl, or do the Detroit Lions get to their first Super Bowl in the history of their franchise and back-to-back trips to the conference championship game? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I will let Dan Campbell tell you himself.
Kneecap.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Detroit Lions will head to Super Bowl 59. They will knock out the Rams in what I think could be a classic in Detroit, in the Dome. Weather won't be a factor, won't be cold inside in Detroit. It's going to be a monstrous game. Could go either way, but I'm rolling with the Lions. I believed in them before anybody else did to go to the NFC Championship game 2 Aprils ago. And this September, I'm telling you right now, September 2nd, 2024, 4 months from now, 4.5 months from now, the Lions will be facing the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. And we could show you right there. Look at that. Kansas City out of the AFC. Look, I mean, the storylines for this game are just great. The Chiefs looking for the first three-peat in the history of the Super Bowl. Mahomes chasing Brady, looking for title number 4. And then the other side, the Lions, the ultimate underdog story. 4 years ago, they were the jokes of the league. As a matter of fact, including their coach, Dan Campbell, who many, myself included, made fun of his opening press conference and the kneecaps, and and son of a gun, 4 years later, he's coached his team to the Super Bowl, the ultimate underdog story. I hear about, Cleveland's the underdog. No. Detroit is the underdog when it comes to professional sports right now. The Tigers are pretty good, but not quite where they need to be in Major League Baseball. The Pistons are god-awful. I don't watch hockey. Y'all tell me how the Red Wings are doing. Here's what I know. The Lions are going to be in this game in February against the Kansas City Chiefs in New Orleans, Louisiana. And when you consider the stage, February the 9th, 2025, Chiefs looking for 3 straight. Lions looking for their first title in the history of the franchise. First Super Bowl title in the history of the franchise. The winner of Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, Louisiana will be history will be made. The Kansas City Chiefs will win their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. They will three-peat, becoming the first team in the history of the Super Bowl era to do so. To me, it comes down to this, and I have to be totally frank and transparent. Let me come on the screen right now. About a month and a half ago, this was my Super Bowl prediction, and I was going to pick the Detroit Lions to beat Kansas City and get their first Super Bowl title. But in the month and a half since, all the shots at Mahomes, all the slights of the Kansas City Chiefs, and no team's ever done it. Oh, it's a chalk pick. Oh, it's easy to pick the team that's won the last 2 to win the next one, when in reality, it's never been done before. I would go so far as to say as picking Kansas City to win is a pretty bold pick. You are defying history. That'd be like picking the Bears to go to the Super Bowl. That'd be like picking because no rookie's ever gone or led his team to the Super Bowl in the Super Bowl era. I'd say picking the Kansas City Chiefs to win it is equally bold. It's never been done before. Well, Patrick Mahomes is the type of athlete to do things that have never been done before. We will enter 2025 with the Kansas City Chiefs in position to win 4 straight. That will be the discussion. 5 months from now, the back-to-back champion Kansas City Chiefs will win Super Bowl 58 against my beloved adopted team, the Detroit Lions. Shout out to the city of Detroit. There's a part of me that's really going to be pulling for y'all. You know, Eminem's going to be at the game in New Orleans. Give him the halftime show with Lil Wayne for all I care. Lil Wayne has Louisiana roots. Make that happen, okay? Come on, NFL. Come on, Jay-Z. Y'all know what to do. But Kansas City, listen, let me put it to you this way. I will not doubt Mahomes until he gives me a reason to. I will not bet. I said this when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl against the Niners against all odds, given what was a very underwhelming regular season, a bad offensive skill position group, obviously outside of Mahomes, Pacheco, and Kelsey. For them to somehow win it after going through the Dolphins, going through the Bills on the road, going against the Ravens on the road, being a better 49ers team. I said after that game, and what was actually ended up being my highest rated video today on Carving It Up, Mahomes, until proven otherwise, should never be an underdog again. Until we have good reason to believe he should be an underdog. Should not be the case. The Chiefs should be favored in every single game that they play until we have reason to believe that they won't win. Now, that's not saying they're going to go undefeated. They're going 13-4, and they're obviously going to win the Super Bowl. And again, after this is all said and done, the discussion, it won't be there quite yet. But I'm telling you, you will have folks. I won't be one of them. Tom Brady set so almost impossibly high a standard that only Mahomes can catch it. Man, respect to these guys. All-time legends. Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, Marino, Elway, Rodgers, all of these guys. All legends. They ain't Tom. Ain't none of them Tom. Mahomes ain't Tom yet. You will have folks, I won't be one of them, that will say, this does it. Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever. It's a little to a certain degree. Remember when, well, I wasn't there, but when Michael Jordan won 3 straight in 1993, folks said, and I think they were accurate in saying this, oh, that's the greatest basketball player ever. Now, I think LeBron surpassed him, but nonetheless, Kareem was the guy. Kareem was the GOAT prior to Jordan. And then when Jordan won 3 straight, it's like, yeah, he has half the championships of Kareem, and I think at that point, he had 4 league MVPs, 3, 4 league MVPs. It's like, it doesn't matter. This guy's clearly the best. Like, we have eyes. We're watching the games. He's the greatest player in the history of the NBA. And of course, Jordan came back and won 3 more championships and further solidified that until LeBron passed him. It's going to be a similar discussion with Mahomes. Is that come 2025, February 10th of 2025, the discussions will start. Brady, Mahomes, I'll still roll Brady. More Super Bowl champions than any single franchise. That's insane. And so to those that say, well, Brady played Mahomes twice in the playoffs and beat him both times. The first game, Mahomes, you cannot blame Mahomes for the Chiefs' loss that first game. He was awesome. And the second game, he had no offensive line. Watch the game. Let's not act like our eyes were not telling us what they were telling us. That Chiefs O-line was dreadful in that Super Bowl against the Buccaneers. That's not to take credit away from Tom. It's actually a knock not a knock. It's a check in the Tom Brady column that he beat Mahomes twice. That point, and it's an important one, gets canceled out. It becomes equal if Patrick Mahomes becomes the first quarterback in the history of the world to win 3 straight Super Bowls. And by the way, Andy Reid. Andy Reid Belichick comparisons. Now that's a conversation I'm willing to have. Andy Reid Belichick, I've had that conversation actually for a while. He wins 3 straight? Come on now. If Kelsey's still balling in year 12, now here's hoping, fingers crossed, Taylor Swift's still there. Power couple of the NFL. I mean, I'm telling you. I'm rolling with the Chiefs, man. Jeff. Man, if Mahomes wins again this year, and he's got the tears flowing down the face emoji. And he also said the Chiefs do have a rookie at left tackle and lost Snead, but man, it is Mahomes. Again, Mahomes is no question in the spot, and then we'll get out of here because it has been a long show, but nonetheless a fun show. I love doing this one every year, and I appreciate everybody for stopping by on this Labor Day. When Tom was in his prime, really even up until Tom's last year when he wasn't as good and the Bucs were under 500, it was still Tom Brady. Can't bet against Tom. That's where we're at with Mahomes. You can't bet against him. Kudos to those that do. And if y'all are right, tip of the cap. Like y'all call it before I did. But I listen, I'm not going to be the guy that bets against LeBron James in his peak, bets against Tom Brady at his peak, bets against Tiger Woods at his peak, or bet against Patrick Mahomes at his. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm sorry. I can't do it. He's too great. He's shown me too many times that I shouldn't doubt him. So there you go. There's my predictions. Hold me to them. Come back to this. If I'm dead wrong on something, come back. You could send me the clip. I don't care. Do what you want to do. But this is what I got. I feel great about all my picks. Listen, I correctly predicted Kansas City to win it all last year. I feel even better about it this year because of the upgrades offensively, and the defense is still really, even losing Snead, still really strong with an awesome defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo. And of course, it's Andy Reid, it's Travis Kelce, it's Patrick Mahomes. You know, one could say they're in an era all by themselves. There's another one for you Swifties out there. And with that is all the time here for today's episode. Special episode of Carving Up Live, the Carving It Up 2024 NFL Kickoff Show. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live, our regularly scheduled programming on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And we're going to be doing this. Football's officially back, y'all. We're going to be doing Bryson's Best 10, which I usually do every Wednesday, but we're back full time, baby. Top 10 teams going into week 1. Cannot wait. Stay tuned for that. And at the end of the show, predictions for Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, opening night football. Listen, college football is upon us. We had some great games of the weekend. Great game last night, LSU, USC. Whew, we're back, baby. Football is in full swing. This is the best feelings in the world, one of the best times of the sports calendars. When football's back, hope's in the air. It's still warm outside, but fall's on the horizon. Come on now. This is as good as it gets. Listen, I got Jim Harbaugh winning Coach of the Year, and I got the Chargers going to the AFC Championship game. In the words of Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh, who's got it better than us? Nobody. NFL's back, baby. Look, I picked the Lions to go to the NFC Championship game before anyone else thought they'd be great, and I'm picking the Chargers to go to the AFC Championship game for everybody else thought that they would be great. So cannot wait. Appreciate you, Jeff, in the comments for keeping the comment section lively, as well as everybody else who tuned in. Jeff, I appreciate it. The love. He says, good luck to your Steelers in week 1. I'll predict that on Friday, but we are back in full swing. Also, again, be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We're on the road, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, to 5,000 subscribers. That's our next big goal, big time, thing that we're aiming for on this show. So please if you have not subscribed, just takes a couple seconds, 2 seconds, hit the big red subscribe button down there and boom, you're done. It's that simple. You're part of the Carving Up family. It's very supportive. It's loving. It's great. We'd love for you to be a part of it. And if you have subscribed, thank you so much. It means everything to myself, to my family, to everybody who's involved with this show. Please be sure to tell your friends about it, your family about it. Please tell everybody you know about Carving It Up Live and to subscribe and like and all that stuff, except for your sleeping cat. Nealon loves football. He doesn't love the football. He gets a little bit freaked out by it, but he loves football in general. I don't think he knows it, but he does. It's a birthright in the Carver family household. Just as importantly, be sure to go to subscribe to Carving Up Live, but also be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. You can find us at the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. Check out my man Patrick Brown, also writing great articles for the Grid's website. Check out all of our amazing content creators with all the great shows. My show might be about to run into bicoastal baseball coming on in a few minutes. By the way, happy birthday, Mike Guido. Speaking of bicoastal baseball, happy birthday to my guy, Mike Guido. I hope this is a great day for you. I hope this is an even better year. Maybe not for your Cowboys and for your man, Josh Allen. They'll win a combined 1 playoff game this year, but happy birthday nonetheless to Mike Guido. All right, I'm headed out of here. Please be sure to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. Doesn't matter where you lean, right, left, center. This is an issue that impacts every single one of us on a day-to-day basis in this country. And no matter what anybody on either side of the aisle tries to tell you, oh, it's not a problem, oh, it's a huge problem, both are BS. Both are not true. It's a huge problem in this country that we need a number of nuanced, detailed solutions to solve, especially this being an election year. If someone on either side doesn't seem to show any sense of urgency in fixing this, vote against them, because we've got to get this fixed ASAP as soon as possible. All right. Whew. I'm exhausted, but nonetheless excited for this football season. Go Steelers. My voice cracked. Let's do that better. Go Steelers. TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year. Tomlin's streak is going to continue. No losing seasons. And Dak Prescott, come this time next year, will be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. I'm hanging on to that, and I truly believe that it is going to happen. So see everybody out there. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And football is back. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. And be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.